Okay, we'll get started. I'd like to call the Town of Coventry Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026 to order. It is now, I had it 6:38. I apologize for the delay. We had some things we had to get out of the way before we got started. So that said, first item of business is determination of a quorum. I will call the roll. Member De Silva.
Here.
Member Price.
Here.
Secretary Burke.
Here.
Vice President Studley.
Here.
And I'm here, Chair Kalunian. That leaves 3 absent or excused for tonight. That's James Kenny, Patrick Delude, and Kevin Reyes. Next item of business, the emergency evacuation plan. In the unlikely event of an emergency, you can go back out the doors that you came in. If for some reason you can't go out those doors, we have doors over here that will take you through the back, and then there's another exit to the exit from the building. I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Next item, 5, approval of minutes from the June 22nd, 2026 meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 22nd, 2026 meeting.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I have one item. I don't think, I think it's a correction. David, you weren't at the June 22nd meeting. Right. Okay. So who was your partner that came? Because
Becky, yeah.
John Verdecchia. Okay. So I have one correction. The solicitor that was present that night was John Verdecchia. Got it?
Thank you.
Okay. So with the one correction, how do we do this? Yeah, so I will,
Do I amend my
Yeah,
motion?
please. That's probably-
I amend my motion to add the correction. Second.
in a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carries. Next item, new applications for discussion, vote, or action. Number 6.1, Theriault ADU, the accessory dwelling. Jason and Anne Marie Theriault. It's an accessory dwelling unit with associated dimensional variance. Assessors Plat 21, Lot 312 in the R20 zone and business park. Property is located at 31 King Street. For the applicant, is anyone here?
Mr. Chair, I recused myself from this one last time.
Okay,
I'll be on the record. If we have someone recusing from the matter, it's unclear if we can vote on this tonight because now we have 4 members of the board. Mr. De Silva, I don't know, is it a hard and fast recusal or is it just a close call?
I know the builder,
Oh, okay.
so I recused myself for that reason.
okay, I'm sorry, sir. We are going to have to continue this to the August 26th meeting, which is a Wednesday. We can put this one on August 26th.
We can put this on August 26th, no problem. Apologies to the applicant. We had surprise cancellations from members.
Today.
Yep, we can only do what we can do with the quorum of the board.
Okay, do we need a motion to continue?
Yeah, we
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to continue. I'm sorry, item 6.1 to the regular meeting scheduled on August 26th.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion by Member Studley and a second by Member Price. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. None opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, next item. Item 6.2, public hearing, Mishnock Woods, master plan, major land development, comprehensive permit. Coventry Route 3 LLC is the owner. The applicant is Benson Essex LLC. It's Assessors Plat 28, Lot 3, zoned plan development, and the property is located at 1055 Tyoke Avenue for the applicant.
There we go. That sounds good.
Okay.
Good evening, Tanessa Azar from Moses Ryan, attorney for the applicant on this project. The applicant's Benson Essex, as you mentioned. I know there might be a few housekeeping things you guys would like to address on the record first. As you mentioned, this application is a master plan comprehensive permit. We were certified complete on this on June 9th, which it's a little bit different timeline for comp permits. It gives 60 days for a decision. So I understand there's going to be an extension granted by the applicant for additional time for you guys to make your decision to a specific date in September to allow for additional decision time in coordination with staff and the solicitor. I think we're looking into the 3rd or 4th week of September. So, like I said, we'll submit a written confirmation of this, but the applicant will consent to maybe something like September 22nd to issue a decision for this.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. And again, that's because of the quorum situation and the way the law is written, we have to have so many people here for each meeting if it gets continued and so forth. So I really
Understood.
appreciate that. Do you have anything to add, Mr.
No,
Plan
but
Director.
what I understand is the applicant, through verbal confirmation tonight, is suggesting they are extending to September 22nd, and they'll follow up with something in writing. But what we understand, so for our record tonight, we're getting a verbal confirmation. Is that fair?
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
And we'll set the date if we need to continue at the end. Okay?
Understood. Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
You good with
Now
that?
that-
Yep. No, thank you.
Now that that bit of housekeeping is all taken care of, we have a team here for you tonight. As mentioned, we're from Moses Ryan. We're the attorney. Also here, we have our civil engineer, Joe Casali Engineering. We have our architect, DBVW Architects. Our traffic engineer on this is VHB. We also have a fiscal impact expert from Joe Lombardo, and we have our planning consultant, Ed Pimentel. All of these people are available here for you today for questions. Some of them will present, some of them will just be here if you have any questions. We submitted reports on a fiscal impact, planning, land use, and traffic from those experts. This project is a 400-unit multifamily development proposed at 1055 Tioga Avenue. It's a comprehensive permit, so it proposes 25% of the units be affordable to low and moderate income individuals. The proposal is that it will be 80% median area income for those units. Currently, this is a vacant parcel, and the proposal, like I said, would have five-story buildings with some amenity buildings and associated parking, landscaping, stormwater, all of those things. The notice requirements have been met for this hearing through the newspaper and through mailed notice. The 400 units is a density bonus under your authority under the comprehensive permit process. This is a bit of unique property. It's a planned development zone, so there's not really an underlying zone. We'll go into that a little more in detail as to how we get to the proposed density. So like I said, we've got a team here to chat with you. I'm going to start by asking Joe Casali Engineering to do their presentation and get you familiarized with the project, and we'll bring up people as their specialties come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just for the record, my name's Joe Casali. I'm a registered professional engineer. Offices at 300 Post Road in Warwick. I have a quick PowerPoint, Mr. Chairman, if I may, to just outline the project. Sometimes it's easier to see pictorially. Yeah. There we are. All right. So, Mr. Chairman, just where we are in the community, you can see in between Hopkins Hill Road and Reservoir Road, that certain section of Tioga Ave, known locally as Route 3, specifically, Assessors Plat 28, Lot 3, The entire piece is just north of 27 acres, almost 1,000,002 square feet. When we look at the piece, we've had it delineated earlier this year. You can see the Mishnock River really approaches its eastern border. The wetland edge further delineated back in 2025 spreads out a little bit more. When we factor in the DEM buffer zones and the jurisdictional areas, you can see we're going to be working just in that western corner, which is still quite substantive in terms of its area. We have a small flood zone, a zone AE, that we will very cognizant of, and along with architect Mike Biveros and I, we will be working together to make sure we have no impediments in terms of the floodplain and keeping all of the finished floors at least a foot above that base flood elevation. So as Tanessa said, this is in the planned development zone. There really is no underlying zone in terms of density. We do have different access easements and encumbrances on the property. You can see one that just came up that benefits the Burger King lot. There's also, what happened, guys? We shorted out. There we go. We also have a second one that wraps around Assessors Plat 2, Lot 3.1, that benefits that lot. And then there's a secondary access, 20-foot wide right-of-way. This was once permitted by DEM. It subsequently expired. It will be part of our process and practice to re-engage and re-permit that piece so we can have a secondary access, as we heard earlier this week in front of the TRC. So when we look at density, as you know, Mr. Chairman, you need to separate that 1.2 million square feet from wetlands on the property. So just for quick math, you're talking about 27 acres, less roughly 9. The area suitable for development is roughly north of 18.5 acres. So when we look at the comprehensive plan in terms of the density of this parcel, with 20 units per acre times that 18.5 acres, you're about 371 units, just empirically. But then when we look at the low to moderate income statute, in terms of the site is serviced by both public sewer and water, it will offer 25% of the units to be low to moderate income. So we add another 5 units per acre, or another 92 units, yielding over 463 units, which is about 115 LMI, applying that 25%. What the applicant's proposing is shy of that, 400 units, 25% of those qualifying for LMI, or 100 of those units. And how are we going to achieve that? We're going to try to do that in terms of the encumbrances of the DEM setback and within the building envelope. As Tanessa said, we're planning on 5 separate buildings, each having 80 units, totaling that 400 units. So these are 5-story building, each with the 80 units. There'll be different accessory buildings. One will be an amenity building. The other will be a community building with an outdoor terrace. And then, of course, we have a multi-unit and a multi-purpose building in front for things like our master meter, mail packages, so forth and so on. It needs to be clear that these amenity buildings, Mr. Chairman, are for the residents only. We don't intend to have a gymnasium where we're renting it out and having outside memberships. This is just for the 400 units that's contained in this lot area. There's Mike Viveros' rendition, Durkee Brown Viveros, Wenthal's architects. I think it's beautiful in terms of the way it's laid out and landscaped in there. You can see it from different views, looking towards Tioga Ave at that point. You can see the massing of the structure in the middle of that. You can see that red building. That's one of the commercial amenities, and the amenity buildings back in there. There it is again with the outdoor terrace. And just, you know, it will be completely residential in use and interconnected in that way with different walking. So what about parking? As you know, Mr. Chairman, required, because it's a comprehensive permit, is 1 space per unit. 400 spaces are proposed, 400 spaces are required. So while you see the density of 400 units, we're not asking in terms of parking for any type of dimensional relief. In terms of fire, we've met this week with the Technical Review Committee, specifically with Central Coventry Fire. Again, we're going to try to re-permit that 20-foot wide right-of-way so we can have a secondary access for the chief and for the men and women. We've also agreed to have different fire lanes that we've implemented in since these plans have been updated last. We've offered to widen some areas to 26 feet from 24 so we can have some staging area for the larger ladder trucks. And we also have a hammerhead turnaround for that furthest amenity building. All easy asks, was very easy to craft in. Appreciate the working relationship with Central Coventry. Fire, this will all come from Kent County, Mr. Chairman. We have both a 12-inch asbestos cement water line as well as a ductile iron main outside of the property. That'll give us domestic and fire protection throughout the site. But we still have more work to do. You understand we're only at master plan. We've got more work in coordination with Kent County and ultimately determine with the fire marshal where they want any and all of the hydrants and appurtenances. Sewer as well is straightforward. It's all gravity. We have gravity mains that we'll be designing and implementing throughout the site to bring all of this through an 18-inch line. Preliminary discussions with the town engineer, we don't understand that there's any capacity issues. Drainage as well is pretty straightforward. The site moves in an easterly direction. You can see why all those wetlands are there. We'll be intercepting all of that flow with different drainage appurtenances, both above ground for attenuation and below ground to reduce some volume and increase the quality of the stormwater runoff. We do have 7 waivers and adjustments just out of an abundance of caution, realizing we're only at master plan. We just wanted to list these in terms of potential relief requested. Specifically, there is a section in your zoning ordinance that requires all of those parking spaces to only be in the rear of the building. You can see the unique characteristic of this layout in that we have parking on both the fronts, the sides, the rear. It's really hard to have front yard and rear yard. I think that was more geared to a single building on a single lot. There's also an odd item in your zoning ordinance, which is to have 2 inches of pavement on top of 10 inches of gravel. That's very, it's not standard engineering practices. It's normally 4 inches of pavement on top of 8 inches of gravel, which we would request to do and ask for, some type of waiver or adjustment from that section. Also, loading spaces, because of the, in terms of where they are to be located in the rear of the property, it's the same subject relief as the parking, as well as the loading space requirements. And the last 4, one asks for overhead electric. We have still, in lieu of underground electric, we still have not worked that out. We may reserve the right to ask for an adjustment to keep it overhead electric. There's also elements in the land development regulations, specifically height requirements. 3 stories is the maximum for building height. As we've stated, Mr. Chairman, these are 5-story buildings. And then the other 2 elements are really distances to property lines into each building. Your code requires 40 feet in between buildings. Fire code tells us that we can go as close as 30. These will be sprinkled buildings, and we'd like to take care of that relief. As well as code tells us to be 40 feet away from a property line. Right now, we're showing distance between that property line at about 30 feet. So those are the 7 adjustments. Again, the first 3 from zoning, the last 4 from planning. Lastly, and I know this has been a lot in terms of the permitting path, we had a pre-application concept review with planning staff back in May. Here we are, technical review committee in July, and here we are before you tonight for our master plan approval. We still have a ways to go if we're approved tonight, Mr. Chairman. Being a comprehensive permit, a lot of elements need to be approved in terms of our freshwater wetlands permit from DEM, a physical alteration permit from DOT, considering Tioga is a state highway. We still have further coordination with sewer, with Kent County Water, with Central Coventry Fire, of course, the town engineer and the DPW for stormwater, and then back for preliminary with an administrative final. I know that was a lot. I'd be happy, Mr. Chairman, to answer members from you or members of the board. If not, Tanessa may have other witnesses that would like to come and speak.
Does anyone on the board have any questions about the plan that was presented? Mr. Price?
So, 400 units seems like a, yes, I just not close enough. Thank you. 400 units, seems reasonable for the size lot, but, it seems like it could cause an awful lot of traffic. Is there any, I didn't hear any discussion about that traffic signal that's not operational, outside that entrance right now?
Yeah, we do have our traffic engineer here. We'll let them, I'm gonna let Bob Clinton from VHB present, and maybe John, he'll be help to answer some of your questions.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question in relation to, and I watched the TRC meeting. I don't remember if it came up. I don't know if the town has any feedback from the engineer. If you could just go into the waiver for the gravel and the asphalt. I understand your explanation, but the numbers are the numbers for a reason, and I'm wondering why is the town engineers satisfied with that waiver?
Shooting from the hip, I can only tell you, I don't believe the engineer did review the entire specifications, and he did not call attention to concerns on that item. So I can re-raise it. If there are specific concerns, then I think you're going to hear from us in the staff report. At this point, I would assume the engineer did not have any explicit concerns with that.
Okay.
It's very odd. In all 39 communities, no one has a 2-inch pavement. Most of us pave in courses, in 2-inch courses. What the DOT standard is, the size of the aggregate in the course, the thickness of the course is 3 times the size of the aggregate. So if you have 3/4 inch stone, you have a 2.5 inch binder. And then if you have a 1/2 inch stone, you have an 1.5 inch top course. And you normally have 4 inches of pavement in 2 courses on top of 8 inches of gravel. Respectfully, I'm registered in multiple states. And in all 39 communities in Rhode Island, I don't even know anyone who's at 3 inches, never mind 2. It must just be an old anomaly in the regulation, but be happy to run it by the engineer. I think they would agree. All of your roads that I've done in terms of public roadways in Coventry and subdivisions have all been 4 inches over 8. Never have we done 2 over 10.
So are you proposing 4 inches over 8 or
Yeah.
2? Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the way it read, you were going 2 inches over 8.
No, we're going 4 over 8. They want 2 over 10, which is,
You're going above.
we are.
Yes.
Same foot, same 12 inches, but much more structurally stronger because you have multiple courses of pavement.
I guess that maybe on my end, there's a little confusion then why it's actually a waiver when you're not proposing a reduction. You're going above the standard.
Yeah, we're deviating. I guess we're reducing the gravel base from 10 to 8. So just out of an abundance of caution, when we met with staff, we looked at any type of adjustment we would need to be made, and that was certainly one that piqued our interest.
Nope, I feel more comfortable about that now.
What is the plan? You're proposing 400 parking spaces. What's the plan for visitors or people that have two cars, which is the majority of households today.
Right, but it's not a majority of the households in that would qualify for some of those low to moderate standards. So we have been asked by staff to look at visitor parking. We think that there are opportunities to put in some visitor parking to be crafted in here. But the one per unit does meet the state statute, and I believe it was set as that for record for reasons.
If, well,
No, go ahead.
I also had a concern with the parking. I had a lot of notes. I was gonna wait till the whole presentation was done, but since we started on the parking, I know in the fiscal impact study, 648 residents are predicted and 400 spaces. The math wasn't working for me. And I understand the affordable component. That's what the state statute requires. I think, and we've seen this before, and I've said it for different plans, the state statute shouldn't have been a one-size-fits-all plan, because Newport or Providence or Woonsocket, where it may work better, one space, where there's more access, more walkability. I think here it's different. And I just, with the number of residents predicted, 20% affordable, even if that 20%, 25%, if no one has a car, we're still, the numbers, the parking space number I don't see it working.
And respectfully, I have this conversation weekly, monthly with different boards and commissions. I think I was in that mindset of everyone needs a car to move around and we need 2 cars per household. And I just don't think that's where we see the trends going in terms of the bus ability, where the bus areas are. And to qualify for these affordable housing, you're not going to be running around in those 2 cars. This is a private development. We want this to work. We certainly don't want to see 284 cars stacked up on Tioga Ave. That doesn't work for our metrics. It doesn't work for our business model. We're trying to comport statutorily with the 400. We see from different studies, and I'll let Bob Clinton speak a little bit more on it, the 1 space per unit may actually be a little bit heavy when you're looking at this demographic of the over 55 and the affordable housing.
You said over 55, this is an over 55 community?
That's correct. There is a portion of this. Am I wrong in speaking with that? Let me strike that.
Yeah,
We didn't read it, so.
Excuse me, let me strike that.
No problem.
But I still think that in terms of the affordable housing and what you have here, in terms of the spaces and the units and the communal layout, that 1 space is going to be the way that things are moving in terms of traffic and transportation, with buses, with pedestrians, with biking, with the low impact. I think to have 800 spaces here would be a disservice to the community in terms of stormwater. Now you have 800 spaces of paving and impervious lot coverage and snow plowing and pollutants. And so I think there's a little bit of a balance that needs to be struck there, which we're trying to do here.
But this is Coventry. It's not Cranston. It's not all these other places that have public transportation. Coventry is very limited in its public transportation. There are no sidewalks on Tioga Avenue. So how are people going to get to Job Lot down the street and other places? So I think in Coventry, parking is a real concern because the majority of people are going to have cars because we don't have that public transportation node that a lot of the other cities do.
Okay. So we got an issue with parking. Let's just stick a pin in that for now. But I did have on my parking list, not just the number of spaces. And I'll throw this out to you. We have a couple of other mill conversions in town where some of the units we only need 1 spot. We did our studies. They're full. They're parked on the street
Beyond.
around. If you go up to the Harris Mill Lofts in up off of 115 in the northeastern edge of town, that's an issue. And obviously, if parking's an issue, not so much for the board, but it may go to the rentability of the units. There's a project in West Warwick where what they did is they double stacked the units. If you rent a 2-bedroom unit for them, you have to work it out with your roommate, and you have one car parked behind the
Tandem
other.
parking.
So that might be an option for you, but I have to agree with these guys. There's no sidewalks on Tyoke Avenue, at least it exists now, and public transportation, even to get an Uber on Tyoke Avenue at night is a challenge. They just don't come out here. The other concern I had about the parking spaces, just because we're on, is did I read there were 8 ADA parking spaces out of the 400?
Right.
But yet I think the grid showed us there were like 20 units, I think. And I wasn't quite sure what the term ANSI makes. I can't flip through all my paperwork right now, but there's a grid that shows the number of ANSI units in each of the building, and I think the total's 20. And then I also would assume that somewhere on this property, you're going to have a rental office or someone staffed to do the rental applications, a manager, someone on duty, maintenance staff that shows up, people that are going to want to move in and out of the buildings. So I just don't want to discount the importance of loading spaces, even if they're in the front, and additional spaces for guests, employees, and the number of ADA spaces. And then the other thing I noticed, and again, it's just at first blush, I know you got the 400 spaces in there, but boy, the poor guy that's way up in the corner up there.
Now, Mr. Chairman, it should be noted, these spaces are laid out at 9 feet. I believe your code requires 8.5. So there's ample opportunity to reduce and
That's fine.
increase the amount of
My point
spaces.
was, it's not like the spaces are immediately adjacent to the rentable buildings either. Some of them are pretty far away. So again, it's just an item that we've identified that might be of concern down the line. And I'm going to let you, I think you were done, but I did have a couple more questions regarding the easements. So the easement next to the Burger King, that's for them to park in that area. So those parking spaces are basically reserved for them? Or were you planning on somehow getting that maybe extinguished because they don't need it anymore? Yeah.
Mind if I jump into
No,
that,
no.
Hazar, about the easement?
Sure.
So both the easements that are at the front of the property are non-exclusive easements. So there's sharing of the land between the two parcels. So it's not like that's an easement exclusively for the use of the Burger King. So there'll be coordination to the extent needed to make sure that the access rights that exist under those easements continue to have
Okay.
their access.
Okay, and then the other one,
Yep.
which I'll call it the former Citizens Bank
Yep.
drive up that was there. It looked like there was that's an access easement that swings around to get them in. It's the entire area shaded in purple, but yet it appeared from one of the drawings that there were actually improvements, landscaping, curbing, and a lawn area that was being placed in that area.
So
Does that?
exactly, that is accurate. It is an access easement. Like I said, it's not exclusive to the parcel that it benefits. The both parcels can use it, and there's language in there about continuing to allow access over improvements that are built for access. So there's some ability in that. Doesn't have a blanket prohibition on making improvements within the access area, but all that will be coordinated with the parties as needed.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize that enough because I
Yep.
think I know who owns that property. And
There's a number of agreements between the parcels related to those properties both ways. So.
okay, it sounds like my question on water and sewer has been addressed. You're in contact and you've had some discussions and you feel the water and sewer service will be adequate to support this at this point,
Correct.
at least.
Yes, we believe Kent County has pressure. We're still in discussions with them, and we believe there's no capacity issues within the treatment train within the town.
You talked about a variance for the 40-foot distance between the buildings. What is the distance that's proposed between the buildings now?
30 feet.
All of them are 30, or a minimum of 30.
A minimum of 30, which comports with fire code, yes.
Okay. And the big item I had down on my list was these flood zones. So if we look at the flood zones, and I don't know if there's a way to overlay the flood zones with the buildings and the parking lots.
Yeah, so there is no building in the flood zone. So the flood zone is going to be, if you can see that red jurisdictional line, which is still there. And then you'll notice that we purposely have all of the buildings completely out of the flood zone, and only some parking areas that are within the flood zone.
Okay, so could you just differentiate, just for my benefit and the benefit of the board, that there was a comment in there about some zones were prone to flood 1% of the time. Some zones were prone to flood 2% of the time. And then we have a FEMA map in our packet. I think it's on page 6 of your
Yeah.
master plan. So where does that come into play? And again, I'm only looking back to the 2010 rainstorm. And I also couple that with some of the things I've seen in other communities where apartment buildings are built and then there's a massive rain event, unfortunately, and folks are displaced. And they look to the town to help us. How did this ever get built? What happened? How did this ever get built here? So I'm kind of looking to make sure that how is that going to be addressed and mitigated so that we won't have that happen here?
Yeah, beyond your town engineer doing a full review on the drainage, we'll have to be back before you a preliminary with a permit from the Department of Environmental Management, specifically the Division of
Yeah, I got
Freshwater
that.
Wetlands. So they're not going to let us displace floodwaters. They're not going to let us
I don't want,
build within a flood zone.
I'm talking about in a stormwater
In a
event.
stormwater event,
Unlikely. I realize it might only be once in 100 years, but they're coming once in 50.
right, there's your 1% storm. There's your 1% storm. That's your 100-year flood event, which you'll see all of the buildings are out of that 100-year storm event. What you see on your FEMA map is a 500-year storm event. So March 2010 was that 1% storm, not that, not that 0.5% storm. So there is and so all of these buildings will be out of your flood zone AE. They will be out of the floodway of the Mishnock, and all of them will be safely above that elevation, 237.3. So there will be no displacement, or there will be no mitigative measures here because there's no displacement of floodwaters.
So in the 500-year storm, which was what we had in 2010,
No, that was the 100-year storm you
Sorry.
had. We have never had a 500-year storm in the history of the state.
Okay.
So that's 5 times greater than the 100-year
Okay.
storm.
So assuming we have another storm like we did in 2010,
Right.
and DEM does all their calculations
That's right.
correctly, is no basements in here, right? Slab. So it's just a matter of putting the elevation of the first floor above a certain level.
If you're in a flood zone, we're not even in the flood zone. We're adjacent to the flood zone.
Right.
So other than having some temporary water on a few of the parking spaces, there'll be no impact if you have that 100-year storm event.
And
You
no,
can't say that.
and no
You can
chance
absolutely say that. Empirically,
In a
we
100
will have to prove that to get a DEM permit.
in a 100-year flood zone, but in the unlikely event that we get more rain than that, or a storm event, or something happens, or some infrastructure fails. And again, I'm just asking, we're just vetting right now to kind of make sure we cover things. Will any of the cars ever be to the point where the water they be stuck? I mean, again, I look at what happened in 2010, and there were parking lots where people came out at work and their cars were
Right.
diverted.
You see the Mishnock, and as it puddles and as it passes under the culvert under Tyoke, what you'd have there is you would have that all of that be released. That water is going to start flowing over Tyoke Ave. It's not going to go upstream to the north and go uphill to Tractor Supply and Job Lot. That's impossible.
And how about where your building is? And I think you can almost see it because
All of our buildings are above the flood zone. All of that water moves easterly. So all of that water that when it chokes and doesn't pass under the culvert under Tyoke, it's going to move overland over Tyoke. It's not going to crawl uphill to the east and flood out buildings.
So in other words, you're saying the water would travel to the southeast or southwest rather than to
The
the north,
southeast,
where the
right.
buildings in your parking lots are.
That's right.
That's okay. So really, these flood zone AE that are shown in here, and then there's another area that's not really, labeled. It's just black dots. Those areas are not not significant in terms of you having to do any
Right.
mitigation.
The most significant area is the AE. That is the one that's in the 100-year flood elevation, which is why it's designated with an A. And the E is because FEMA has determined the actual base flood elevation of that 273.3.
Okay. So did you have a slide that showed the buildings in relation to that blue line that's on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And what is the blue line again? The blue line that just nips the corners of the buildings there in the front.
Right. That's the DEM jurisdictional area. That dashed blue line,
Mhm.
that's the DEM jurisdictional
Okay.
area. Any work
You're going to get a.
east of that, we have to get a permit from the Division of Freshwater Wetlands.
Okay, great. I got it.
And I just one note.
Sure.
So this site is disturbed to a great extent. So there's existing pavement in a lot of this area. So it's pre-disturbed area. That's all, 11 or so acres of this out of the 12 that's going to be built on is already disturbed. So that factors into the coordination with DEM.
I don't want to, how would I put it? Date myself. But I went to that shopping plaza when Kmart and Allmax was there. And when you go, that lot used to have standing water in it for days after a heavy rainstorm.
We took
That was,
over the-
so
yeah.
I think that's one of the concerns that we hear is, gee, isn't it wet over there? Isn't it wet over there? Because people remember that. So that's kind of why I wanted to ask the question and get it on the record.
Understood. And like I said, that was just in reference to the jurisdictional area.
Yeah.
Even though these areas are in their jurisdiction, they are previously disturbed.
I just have a couple,
Sure.
few more.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I don't want to hammer you on the parking thing, but there were just a couple of things that we didn't bring up that I noted on the plan.
Can we hear from traffic? Would this wrap
Um,
that? Do you want us to bring up Bob Clinton to speak about traffic, or would you like to ask now?
I'll ask now. It's more of an engineering thing. I have a traffic question for later. The parking is in relation to the overall site plan. I saw no trash designated areas, dumps. I'm assuming there are going to be dumpsters.
Yes.
There's no,
Architect on this?
Eh.
Yeah. We'll utilize the whole team. That's all.
that's fine.
It'll tell
It
you
just,
they're internal. Are they internal?
Yeah,
Okay.
Michael Viveris. Michael Viveris, DBV. Oh, Michael Viveris, Senior Principal, DBVW Architects, Providence, Rhode Island. Yeah, the intent, with buildings of this size, it's often useful to have trash rooms on each floor and then have a central trash room on the first floor. And there would be, likely trash chutes that would go down to interior trash compactor. So a lot of the trash will be handled inside the buildings. That's the plan at this present stage.
I'm in the mindset of trying.
No, it's a great
what's
question.
What's going to remove parking spaces? If there's a dumpster, if
Yeah.
there's need for access to an internal dumpster,
Yeah.
is that going to eat up parking space?
The goal is we have enough space on the first floor to accommodate trash rooms with multiple carts. And what will happen is there'll be trash collection. They'll wheel those carts out to a truck that will load them. Mhm.
Okay. Another parking related scenario, we bring it up at a lot of big plans like this with a lot of impervious surface. Where is there a plan to put snow, to plow snow? I hate to see it plowed into, drainage that defeats,
can't.
it defeats the purpose.
Yeah, well, we can't.
Um,
Being at master plan, we don't have snow removal areas on here. We will put some thought into that and lay them out in the areas. Absolutely. It has to be there. I do think that there's ample space for snow removal. If not, being a homeowners association, we'll have to remove it. We'll have to truck it off site. And that'll be in our homeowners doc, and that'll be recorded in the land evidence records because we'll have to stipulate to DEM what we're going to do with all of the snow as well.
Okay. Two more things, real quick. Power. You mentioned a waiver relief from underground. What's your thought process with that? Why?
We're at master plan and we just haven't dug that deep yet. We don't have mechanical engineers yet. So we're just unsure if this is going to be entirely underground electric as stipulated, or if we will have sections of overhead electric from the main pole to that first transformer is normally overhead, and then it's underground. So there may be sections, especially on that boulevard, that could be overhead. So it was just one of the ones we wanted to reserve the right, to just list that could be an issue, sections of overhead.
Okay. Just for thought down the road, because I know you've been doing due diligence with this. And at TRC, it came up and it was handed to us in the beginning. The fire access, ladder trucks. If now power and electrical comes into play, I don't want to see that all for naught. All this access done, but then there's power lines in the way. Can't put a ladder truck up where there are power lines.
Oh yeah, that all has to be.
I don't want to see that done and then down the road, well, we have to have all the utilities above ground. So now our fire access, some of that is,
Working with Central Coventry, we'll also have to work, and they'll let us know of any responding communities. I'm not sure the town has a ladder truck. I think that comes from a responding community, and all of those outriggers, which is why you see some of these 24-foot access road widened to 26. I think they're already thinking about that, how they're going to fight this fire and how they're going to stage that battalion wherever they have to.
and just the last thing, at first glance, when you drive by the site, it seems to be down a slight grade. I know you mentioned a gravity system. You don't anticipate any need for a pumping station whatsoever? This should work?
Well, I mean, that will come at preliminary when we have final permits. We're certainly not scared of a low pressure force main or of an interceptor. But looking at the topography of this and the depth of those manholes in the street, it looks to be as though we'll be able to service all of these units via gravity. But the important thing to us is that we have capacity.
Yeah.
Pump's not an issue with today's backup generators, so forth and so on. It's more of a, at this level of master plan, it's more of a capacity issue.
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, I just want to mention, there was some discussion out in the community, the concept that the fire district would need to purchase a large-scale truck for this. That is not factually correct. The fire truck would not need to be purchased because of this project.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I was going to ask him to buy one. I'm just kidding. So just to kind of maybe wrap up this part of the question and answer, unless someone else has, but I just wanted to go back to what my colleague here, Mr. Burke, just brought up. I think he was asking about the electrical, like transformers and poles, and also the need for a sewer pump station, not because of your ability, you didn't care about how you got the sewage taken care of, but it takes up space. So again,
Yeah, these are all.
It would be underground, that pump. We would design a pump station underground.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be an
Right.
above ground pump station like we had in the 80s and the
point
70s.
taken is you can see that the overall concern seems to be the vast amount of asphalt parking that's eating up the site where we're kind of,
Which is why we're at one
it's un-
space per
right.
100. So
It's
we're trying
unfortunate.
to keep that balance. So
it's just too bad it wasn't a bigger site to some degree. That's I think what we're getting.
We're gonna get here at some point, and I hate to pop the top on this so early, but a lot of the site design and it's all driven by density. And I didn't want to use put that word out there right away, but density is,
which is why we're at master plan.
Yeah.
We're trying to determine the
Yep.
density. It would be foolish of us to come here with fully designed plans when we haven't gotten your thoughts on density, even though we believe we're 60 some odd units less than what is allowed here. This was the whole point of this integral and iterative process is where are we in terms of density, where we're putting telephone poles and transformers. It's just.
it's moot at this point.
It is. It's way too early. We have put an exorbitant amount of thought into this, as you can see by the architecturals and the engineering for master plan. But tonight, is the purpose of tonight is really the density.
And, okay. Did anyone, yes, sir.
Yeah, so I guess to that point, I'm trying to reconcile the staff report based on and against the submitted application and the materials in that application. So I'm seeing here a minimum allowable density of 196.95 units. Meanwhile, the ask is 400. So I don't know if that's happening later in the presentation, but it was brought up in this section of
no.
the application. So I'm just trying to better understand. the
And
difference.
we will, Ed will discuss it later, but in terms of density, per your comp plan,
So we do have an expert that has a
Yeah.
report. If you're ready for that portion, we can, like I said,
Yeah.
we can jump to
You-
that
yeah.
and kind of hear.
You know what? I agree. I think, and I'm sorry, Member Studley, because that is a good question, and I think it was,
To be available for any,
Yeah, right.
engineering.
I,
comments.
right. So I just want to make sure before we move on, does anyone have any other questions related to the site plan or the overall design of the site? Okay.
Take a break for a few
Yep.
minutes.
So hearing none. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Do you,
So
if we do traffic and then go to?
you
the
can do
density?
whatever order you'd like. We'll try to listen to everything because we know we can always ask more questions at the end. Right,
Exactly.
right.
Any
Yep,
questions?
yep.
Everyone's here.
I don't want to get too hung
We'll
up.
stay kind of engineering, go with our traffic engineer and then bring it back around.
Sure, that's fine.
So I'd have
Thank you.
Bob Clinton
Yeah.
from VHB to give a little bit overview of the traffic analysis he did. Thank you, Bob.
Good evening. Robert Clinton, Vaness Hangen Breslin, VHB. We've done a preliminary traffic assessment. A lot of my thunder has already been stolen. We will be, Route 3 is a state roadway, so we will have to go and get a physical alteration permit. The site is located between Reservoir and Hopkins Hill. So there are existing traffic signals at both of those locations, which is a good thing. It tends to platoon the vehicles along Route 3 and can create gaps in the traffic stream. So we will be doing an assessment to see if traffic signal is warranted. The trip distribution appears to be approximately 50-50. There are 3 ways of getting to 95 from the site. Nooseneck Hill Road, you can cut down Hopkins Hill Road, you can go over to Arnold to New London Turnpike. So it's good distribution of traffic. We foresee more rights being taken out of the site than lefts in the morning to get to the highway. However, we've looked at it if there is a 60% left turn. We anticipate it to be more of a 50-50 or slightly more people going towards Nooseneck Hill Road. So we'll be doing a full traffic study and submit that in the next stage. However, we feel that that the existing access location, we've looked at the site distance. It meets site distance requirements. As far as the parking, there are numerous studies. The marketing trends. They're not going to want to build a site that doesn't provide enough parking. They're going to have empty units, like you said. So that's a legitimate question. And as we get to the next stage, they'll provide additional information if they can get additional parking, and if it's required in order to market these units. As far as that goes, I think at this stage, we've done the due diligence necessary for the master plan, and I'm ready to answer any questions that you have.
I'll start down here. Well, see if you got any questions for right now? I'll come back if you
I'm
don't.
going to wait for the traffic study.
Okay.
I mean, I have my own ideas on the
Yeah.
traffic. They're both 2.8 miles, whether you go left or right. But I do think the majority is going to be left because you got Dunkin' Donuts across the street, and human nature is human nature. The schools are also on the right,
Mhm.
not on the left. The supermarkets are all on the left, not the right. So I think the majority of the traffic is going to be left and being in this town. Tioga Avenue is a mess. You have the schools, you have the buses. There's a lot of traffic on that road, and the road isn't the best road right now anyways, and we'll see and I understand it's a state road. Got it, right? But you got a lot of traffic coming in on both ways. We just had that development come in next door to, McDonald's, right? It's going to be a problem set right there. So there's a lot of traffic coming onto Tioga Avenue. I read your study about the number of cars and everything else, but again, all of this becomes a swag. Got it. So I'll just wait to see what they come up with.
My colleague stole everything I wanted to say. It's that, yeah, the numbers, whatever you put into the computer, however you calculate it, the width of the thoroughfare, the highways this way, that way. I think it is a great site with access in multiple directions. But when you take into account the human factor, like we said, Dunkin' Donuts, the supermarkets this way, the high school was a big one because at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m., Monday through Friday, September to June, that traffic backs up from Reservoir Road, backs up to the Job Lot and Tractor Supply traffic light. And I don't know if that would show up in a traffic study. It's the human factor, the nuances of Coventry, the nuances of the area. Please take that into account. But I think the site access, I mean, arguably, you might not find something better, a location in the town. Really, I think it's good, but it needs to be done right.
And I do see on there, you got the speed limit 35 miles an hour, and I get all that. But in the last 2 weeks, we've had 2 major accidents on Tioga Avenue that took out telephone poles, that shut traffic down totally on both directions. So it's a difficult road. And I just ask that when you look at that, you take that into consideration. And I know traffic engineers, you're not designed really to take the human factor in, but we have to worry about that human factor.
This end, anybody? Yes, sir.
Bob, I have to kind of agree with my fellow board members. I live right down the street from this development off of Wisteria. And most of my neighbors are taking a left out of the neighborhood for both, everyone for local civilization, whether it's going to the supermarket, going to get gas, going to do whatever during your daily operation. It's a left going up to Tioga Ave. I live just off of Nooseneck Hill. And I'm one of the few people in my neighborhood that when I'm commuting long distance, I go south down Nooseneck Road. Most of my neighbors go onto Tioga Ave and go down Hopkins Hill. So I think you might be underestimating or overestimating the turn ratios. I think there was something else, but it'll come to mind later.
Yeah, real quick, just to clarify this, we anticipate it to be that, but we look at a worst case scenario. We looked at for traffic signal warrants and things like that, like 60%, a higher volume making the left turns. So even though we think it's going to be one thing, we always try and overcompensate because the DOT is going to require us to do that because they don't want us to go in and have a situation where they have to come back and fix it. They want us to pay for any mitigation that's necessary.
And the other thing was the speed limit. This is right at a transitional zone.
Mhm.
So one direction, you're still at 45. The other direction, you're at 35, approaching the 45. So in summary, no one's going less than 45.
Mhm. True.
If you're lucky. Thank you.
Did you have anything, Mr. Scully?
Has there been any preliminary talks with DOT?
We haven't initiated that contact yet.
Okay.
So
Okay, go ahead.
I apologize if I missed it when it came up in the initial engineering. I know it came up at TRC. Did we discuss already second means of egress? I know there's the small little strip to the easterly portion, but there was mention at TRC of talks with Job Lot for, is that gonna, is there any progress on that? Will that be an option at all?
So they were pretty much considered alternates. It would be, how do we get secondary access here? The thought was to go through the existing access that's provided without, if we didn't need to negotiate with a third party. This is something we can control by, using the existing access. If in the future it was, needed, that'd be a different discussion. But as of right now, because the secondary access is going to be proposed by that 20-foot, there's no plans for other access at this moment.
Is that 20-foot? That's earmarked, I guess, for fire access only. What, is there a gate? What's the?
That would be coordination to see with what the fire department would want there. Part of the traffic study will explore all of that, but also coordinate with fire to see, any gating would obviously be accessible to emergency responders and stuff, but we're not sure if there'd be any gating.
Yeah, you weren't sure if that was going to be exclusive of first responders. You were thinking to open it right up as a secondary access. It used to be one way, I think, in or out when.
I think
the
that would,
stop and-
there was definitely discussion during the TRC that if it were open, it'd make sense for it to be one direction. I think all that would be evaluated.
Right.
But no decisions on that right now. And like I said, with that being the focus now, Job Lot's not really a focus at the moment.
I'm just going to throw this out for what it's worth. I know you referenced Reservoir Road and Hopkins Hill, but in between, we've got Stop and Shop in the liquor store, South Main Street and Jefferson Drive, and then we've got immediately after this, the Job Lot Plaza. So there are some breaks with the lights, but stacking is an issue when you talk about the level of service. In fact, they've had to retime that light at Stop and Shop because at peak times in the afternoon, it backs up through the Hopkins Hill intersection. So if that light's not timed such that Route 3 gets the favor, and then after 6:30 when the traffic drops off and people are going out shopping and doing their errands, they have it so that as soon as you hit the pad, the light changes, stops the traffic on Route 3 and people can pull out. And I'm just
Yeah, it's
throwing that out
critical.
for your information.
Yeah.
And I don't know when we're going to get the traffic study, but I know you say it preliminary, but I just don't know where that weighs into our decision now. And again, just a piece of history, there was a light there and it went out of service. And Walmart was where Job Lot is today. So there was a light put in there for them. And Burger King, of course, benefited from the break, as you said. Well, then that light where Walmart was stayed there, Job Lot and Tractor Supply go in, they took this one out of service. So the point is, I'm not so sure who's going to have more traffic, you or Job Lot. So,
Well, it depends on the time of the day, so, the different peaks.
right. So I just don't know if that's I mean, I know you're going to meet with DOT and maybe focus on your little intersection, and they may say a light's not warranted, but if a light could be put there instead of at the next, I don't know which one is going to serve the community better. I probably would agree that 2 lights are not needed, but I'm not sure which one would. And then I also just want to echo what my colleague said, the traffic at 7 o'clock, because I do go that way down to get 95 South sometimes. With the high school, and then again at 2 o'clock, that's where you're going to see it. And most of the folks that are going out are going, again, it depends on their age, but they're heading to, there's nothing between, there's Coventry Lumber, which is only open like 8 to 5, and there's a Dollar General, and folks heading to 95. But that Tyoke Avenue stretch is going to be the draw with where these folks may want to go. So I would think the left-hand turn is going to be the optimum. Go ahead. Okay, Doug.
If you don't mind, just 2 points of clarification, and I don't mind if Mr. Clinton can speak to them. In discussions at TRC, we got the sense that the level of trip generation from this and the dynamics of Tioga would not likely warrant a light according to RIDOT standards. So that's part one. And if you don't mind speaking to that a little bit, we know we're at master, but if you can tell us where you think this is headed with a warrant. The other question is, when we saw the master plan and the emergency access lane, the separate reach, we were interpreting the plans as to suggest you're intending for that to be emergency access only. I'm wondering if you can certainly change that at prelim, but is the intent now for emergency access only, or is your intent to allow regular vehicle access on that as well?
back in. The intent right now is just emergency access, and I've actually just been told by the engineer that the fire chief preferred this to the job lot option, so just a little more clarity. But right now, it's just proposed for emergency access.
And I listened to the TRC and I remember the fire chief saying he didn't care if it was a one-way access used by the residents or which direction, because he said in an emergency, even if it's one way out, we're going in, right? So there was talk about possibly having that as a secondary means, even if it's only for right in folks coming in rather than going to the light and further. And again, the issue is, I understand level of service, all those terminology. We get enough traffic studies, but unfortunately, the folks that live in the town, most of them are more concerned about congestion and how long it's going to take them to pull out of their street and get to where they're going without having cars in front of them or behind them. So
Yeah, most-
that's the reality.
Most
that we
most
face.
developers would love to have a traffic signal at their site, and most people come and say, put a signal at
Oh,
my
yeah.
driveway, put a signal at the end of my street,
Screws it.
and the DOT can't put signals everywhere where everybody wants one.
I understand.
So there's certain warrants that have to be met. There's there have been studies that if you put signals in where they're not warranted, they're actually more of a safety concern. Because you have people they get T-boned and stuff at intersections where that's a serious situation. So DOT takes it serious, putting signals in where they're warranted. And I understand your concerns, and we hear this all the time from different communities. As far as the preliminary numbers, we assumed 60% of the people are taking lefts out of there. You have a heavy amount of traffic, residential developments, you have a heavy amount of traffic leaving in the morning and a heavy amount of traffic coming home in the evening. Obviously, they come in and make another trip or whatever, but during that peak hour, and you can see in the memo that the exiting traffic is the one that's going to spur the need for a signal. In the morning, based on 400 multifamily residential units, there's going to be 123 vehicles coming out of the site during that morning peak hour. And then in the afternoon, much less. You're having more people coming into the site returning from their day's activity. So assuming the 60% left turns out, there's three major warrants that are looked at. An 8-hour warrant, so it looks at the highest 8 hours of the day. So 4-hour warrant. And then there's a peak hour warrant. Typically, the DOT doesn't like to put in signals when it only meets 1 hour of the day. So it doesn't meet any of those warrants based on a preliminary assessment of these. So that's the bad news for people that want to see a signal there.
I don't think any of us necessarily wanted to see the signal. I think it
Right.
was, we just want to
Right.
make sure that we got safety and
Right.
congestion. Well, okay.
Yeah, and then the other thing we're going to look at
Definitely
too,
want to see a signal
Oh.
there.
we're going to look at a gap study too, just to see what kind of gaps are created by the existing signals out there. So
Yeah, and I think that's important because, again, if you've got cars heading one direction, like towards the high school at a peak time, they could actually block that entrance, stacking at the light for job lot, which may not even be open at 7 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, there might be some timing issues that need to be addressed. And that's why I threw out the suggestion that this site may be more desirable for a light than job lot currently is with Tractor Supply, with the exception of a Saturday when the folks are going in and out of there. But
And just to
I
clarify,
wouldn't say roundabout.
just to clarify, you think it's very unlikely this will meet the warrants for a light according to RIDOT's review. And I just want to make sure it's clear for the record as well, regardless of what the local desire or the applicant developer's desire would be for a light, ultimately that decision remains strictly with RIDOT. Is that all correct?
correct, yeah.
Yeah, we're aware of that. Thank you for putting that out.
That's why I'm going to wait to see what the traffic study says, because my understanding is they're getting ready to put a light at Mishnock because of the accidents on Tioga Avenue, and I'm going to look into that one.
Okay, that it for the traffic? Good. Thank you, Mr. Clinton.
Thank you. My next thought would be to bring up Ed Pimentel to walk you through his planning and land use report. I'll let him present. His resume is included in your materials as well as his report, which we'd like to be part of the record. Ed is happy to give you his credentials if needed. We consider him an expert in the field. Otherwise, I'll let him kind of guide you through, and I'll focus us on certain points if I think we need that. Thank you, Ed.
You've been here before, right?
I have, sir.
Okay. Are you guys okay with him waiving the reading of any of his credentials? We're all set.
So for the record, Edward Pimentel, that's P as in Paul, Imentel. Obviously, this board understands comprehensive permits well. You're the Board of Jurisdiction, and I know you've done several recently that I've been involved in. But so typically, it's much easier to come to what that base density is that's allowed by the state when you have a zoning designation, right, that allows a certain density. If this was zoned R20, you multiply the number of units that are allowed by acreage, you add in what's entitled under the density bonus by the state, and you'd have a clear number as to what the base number is. And by the way, that's a starting threshold point, but we would know what that is. What was unique about this property was that it was zoned years ago for planned development because it was always intended to be utilized for more intense development, as evidenced by the Brookside approval. So I think where the numbers kind of are in conflict is obviously staff took that number that was approved by a prior project and said, let's use that as a base number that would be established for the property and then add on the density bonus. I reviewed all of your regulations and out of total respect and courtesy, because I know the comprehensive plan was a little dated, although it's still technically at the time when we were doing this project, it was the comprehensive plan that still was the approved plan in accordance with all local making decisions. I reviewed your entire new comprehensive plan as well that has been recently adopted. And the reason why I did that was back in 2004, prior to the vast amendments of the affordable housing statutes, was really the last one where they completely revised the affordable housing statute, providing clear guidance as to achieving the needs to address affordable housing. And the cities and towns had a lot of voice in that and said, we would like to develop our own strategies of how we're going to achieve the 10%. So all the communities then that had not realized compliance drafted their own affordable housing plan and devised strategies for a 20-year plan. That would have meant compliance last year. Obviously, that's a wish list. It always doesn't come to fruition. So what happens is each community, through the iterations of its comprehensive plan and housing elements, will revisit those strategies and provide new strategies or revisit strategies that may be successful, and then also document what the need is. Is it family? Is it elderly? Is it rental? Is it ownership? Is it a combination of those things? So I obviously went to your brand new comprehensive plan saying, I've reviewed your affordable housing plan. I'm very familiar with the comprehensive plan that's still in effect. It may be dated, but it's still in effect. And where's the guidance now? The housing element of your new comprehensive plan is a little weak. It didn't provide much guidance as to what the objective is now going forward. I've had conversations with your plan. I know you're going to be working on a much more in-depth housing component of that. So I had to take all that information, still relying on what was the plan that was in effect. And that plan stated for the plan development was that it equated with a high-density residential. And it said specifically those properties that we've determined should be zoned plan development, and this one was, it's the density is that would be appropriate is 20 units per acre. So I ran with that number because that's in your regulations. And that's when I got together with council and the design team and says, this is the number that I'm gleaming from the comprehensive plan. It kind of flows from that Brookside. That Brookside, the residential numbers were lower, but it was also a mixed use with lots of commercial. And quite honestly, it disturbed a lot more of this site. And that's why I put it in my plan. We were very sensitive not to realize to the extent that that development would in disturbing the land resources. So we've concentrated our development to what was previously disturbed by the big box, the previous commercial development. The Brookside was going and taking over the majority of the land resources. We don't want to cut any more forest down. We're cutting very minimal beyond what's already disturbed. So this was a serious, concerted effort to realize the density that we believe is appropriate under your regulations, but yet very conscious and considerate of the property itself, and so that we don't increase a more impervious surface, need more drainage controls, right? So that's why we're consolidating. That's why we asked for the variance from the 40 down to the 30 and so forth. I guess we could disturb more land resources. We don't think that's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate as a planner. So that's where we got those numbers from, that 20 units per acre, in addition to what the state allows as a density bonus. And then we worked back, but what can the site handle? It's never the intent to maximize a site if the site can't handle that count. Getting a little bit into parking, and I'm just going to purely speak this from a land use perspective. I've now been doing affordable housing for at least 15 to 20 years. I've done many, many projects, small, very large, rural, urban communities. What we've done is we revisit developments, and what we found is we run sometimes with the communities that mandate 2 spaces per unit and so forth. And what we found was that there was a lot of empty parking. And I understand there's a difference between rural and urbanized environments. I'm not going to question that. But when we went back and did a test case, we found that we created all this additional impervious surface. It's not a service to the environment. It's not a service to the community. And much of the parking was still left unattended, not required. Another thing that hasn't even been said tonight that needs to be said now. It's archaic when we discuss unit count. That's become an archaic zoning concept. What do I mean by that? We've learned that bedroom count is what really drives impacts on communities. The greater the number of bedrooms per unit, the greater that's going to be, and Mr. Lombardo is going to speak to this eloquently much more than I, but I've seen the studies. The greater the bedroom count per unit, the greater the impact on, right, generating school-age children, the fiscal impact, the greater number of vehicles that are generated, the greater need for parking, the greater traffic generation. Smaller units, just as a matter of the way the public that are interested in these type of smaller units, and it's a great demand. There's a great demand. I'll show you a development in my own community, just the John Flatley did. There are 400-something units. I think there's 1 or 2 children in there. And the parking lots are half empty because he kept also the bedroom count down, and that's what we wanted, so we gave him a break on parking relief. Different environment, I'm not questioning it, but the facts speak for themselves. That is why we designed this with that in mind. We designed this purposely, and I know you read my report, I know you do your due diligence, but we're talking a combination of 320 studios and 1 bedrooms. To be specific, we're talking 98 studios and 222 1-bedrooms. We're catering to a smaller group because purposely we know it's going to have less impact on the community, fiscally, parking, traffic-wise. And we only did 82 bedrooms. And even the 2 bedrooms, and the engineer and Mr. Lombardo can speak to this eloquently too, also don't drive a great impact. But we concentrated the majority on the 1-bedrooms. We didn't go to the family units. There's a demand for affordable family. We didn't go in there because we didn't want to overstress this site. And we wanted to address that whole point of parking, fiscal, not disturbing more of the site like was approved under the Brookside. So this was a conscious and thoughtful that went into the design of this development from a land use perspective. And so that's how it came out to the numbers. Out of respect for the staff too, I equated both scenarios in my report. So I looked at the 20 units per acre, which I believe was supported by your regulations, but I understood where they were taking their position. We had an approved project at X number of units, and then we added the base density. That's how it came out to the 200 versus the 400 to answer this gentleman's question. I would note that Brookside development was 104 units. It was 4% affordability. That means that development would have contributed all those units to a housing stack and not even come close to its offsetting its own contribution. That's why most inclusionary ordinances mandate that 10 to 15% so that you offset your own contribution and try to help meeting the statutory compliance. Here we're talking 400 of 100 units of affordable. I crunched the numbers. This is going to have a 0.5 to 0.75% in helping this community. So if you look at the unique characteristics of a site, a property, and decide what can that site actually accommodate, I think that's where good land use comes into. Instead of a subjective standard that we apply across many neighborhoods, because no neighborhood is the same and no property is the same. So I think if under affordable housing, if we looked at the site specific and decided what can it accommodate, that's how I think we would realize and achieve statutory compliance instead of constantly dribbling down the numbers. Like I have a tendency to do in a lot of communities. We start crunching the numbers, we argue numbers, the numbers go down, the affordability goes down, and it's just more compromise projects on properties that maybe shouldn't be developed in that manner to that density. This one I think can accommodate it. And like I said, I think we need to get off unit count and look at bedroom count. I think that really is where the true impact is realized. The board has any questions?
Any questions? Just a couple of things. I don't like to compare to the two. I know that's what we used as our base calculation and there was commercial development, but as you can see, it didn't come to fruition. It
Correct.
didn't work. And it probably didn't work because there was a lot of other issues with that developing that site. And we've had, I think, at least one, if not two other proposals for that site recently where we thought something was going to come online and then it didn't.
Yeah, what tends to happen is the market, right? Some of these developments take years and years of design, getting through the approval process. Post the approval process, you start getting the financing, and then the market changes on you. I've been involved in so many of those projects. It's not that the project itself could not be developed, it's just that the market conditions changed.
And there were other things that were coming into factor with that. But the only thing I do appreciate you said about the one bed in the studio, I believe there's a strong market. We have someone else that's come before us. He's been redoing some buildings in West Warwick and he's doing 400 and 500 square foot units and he's renting them out. There's a market for that. There's no doubt. So I kind of look forward to filling some of that void. We just had a presentation on Monday in Coventry. And I do have to ask this one question. Are these rentals or are these condos?
I believe they're rentals. Yeah, they're all rentals.
All rentals. That's what I thought because Mr. Casali referenced homeowners association when he was up here, and I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I think what he should have said is it's going to be under one ownership, so there'll be management.
No problem. I just wanted to clarify that. And because again, Monday's presentation showed us Coventry, how far behind we are, the rest of Kent County and the state as a whole, as far as available rentals. People that grow up in Coventry that want to rent an apartment either have to take a substandard dwelling or move to Warwick or West Warwick.
Yeah, I don't want to get off pace here because we're here about a compromise project that I waited and there was a couple behind me. I cannot begin to tell you how many ADUs I've approved in the last month. They're being plopped up on every property because there's such a demand. Individuals, couples downsizing for these small rental units. And on average, they're probably 500 to 700 square feet, some smaller, some slightly larger, but they don't need all that space.
But even then, take into account what they're getting, how much that's costing them to put that unit up in relation to the market rent that they would probably get if they rented it.
The problem is construction costs.
Yep. Okay. We're good.
Appreciate it. So that was the bulk of it. Like I said, we have everyone else here. If there are any specific questions to their topics, I don't know if you want to circle back to questions and we can bring people up as necessary. I have some comments about process and, what a master plan for a comp permit means, because not every comp permit comes in for a master plan. It's an optional setting, what your findings would be, but we can hold those to see if you have any more questions. Like I said, I think the biggest takeaway, we've talked about the traffic. A traffic study would be coming at the preliminary plan stage. I think there was a question of when. The only requirement for a comp permit during master plan is like a traffic statement, which is what you've received. So the full traffic study would be a preliminary plan item just to set the expectation for that. So happy to, if you have any more questions right now before I, go into a spiel about the law or any of that kind of stuff.
This is a public hearing, so we're
Yep.
going to open this up and then we're
Okay.
going to get people and don't go by the audience. We may have folks on
Certainly.
Zoom that want to weigh in. So generally the way we do it, and I will just circle back. Does the board have anything else right now? Okay.
I have
Yep. Yes, sir.
one question.
Yep.
In regards to the fiscal impact study.
Certainly.
and I
Would you like me
did-
to bring up the author? I have Joe Lombardo here.
I don't think
We can see the
I'm gonna-
question, yeah.
I'm actually going to direct the question to the planning staff and Feel
Okay.
free to chime in. I'm just curious, what, for a project like this as proposed, what would the sewer assessment fees be to the town? Is that on a unit base? What?
It would be, I don't want to speak with specific numbers, but it would be on a unit basis, and it would be a fairly high number.
Right.
I don't know if the team has calculated sewer assessments and if you've done that due diligence.
I don't know if anyone's. Doesn't seem like anyone has a calculation here.
Okay. I mean, we have an ordinance. I don't want to speak offhand because it's not clear to me if multifamily in a rental with the number of bedrooms, if it gets a different assessment because of the nature. But we generally do assess by unit. And
That is direct revenue to the town.
yeah, it is. I mean, the assessment covers improvements that are needed. It's put into a pot of money to help cover improvements, but it is certainly revenue it's fees coming to the town.
It sounds like restricted account.
Enterprise fund, goes into an enterprise fund for the benefit of the sewer system.
Okay.
Okay, so that's it
Go
for
to
now.
public
So,
comment and we'll.
yeah, at this point, and the way we usually do it, if, rather than, people are gonna have questions, they're gonna turn their head around. What we'll do is you're gonna jot down, try to capture some of them, because some may be similar, and then at the end, come back and kind of try to respond to
And we'll
those,
take 'em
if
from
that
you.
works.
That
Okay.
works for us.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to open public comment, public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open to
Public
public
hearing.
hearing.
We have a motion by Mr. Price to open public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Member Studley. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, is there anyone in the audience that is here to speak for or against this application or has a general comment? Anybody? Now that I look out, it looks like everybody's with your team. There's not that many residents here. Sure, come on up, please. You have to state your name and your address for the record, and then we'll take the question down. We may have some folks on Zoom, so we may delay the answer.
Mary
until-
Ellen Robertson. And what else?
Address.
Oh, 25 Lowell Street, Coventry. So you could just bring the microphone down just a little bit. Two questions. Of the traffic lights, when the high school gets out, you have so many new drivers that I hear the sirens every day between Burger King and McDonald's of accidents. I cannot believe that they wouldn't approve, that they don't think there's if you're going to add all these additional cars and people, that they don't need a traffic light for those people to either make a left to get in on oncoming traffic, to get into the apartments. My second question is, I live off South Main Street. Are we ever getting sewers? Are they, like,
Okay.
sewers are on Tioga Avenue, but South Main Street is the oldest part of town and the oldest houses, and we don't have sewers.
Okay, so I'm gonna just jump a little bit. We've already stated that the jurisdiction or whether or not a traffic light can go there is up to the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. The town cannot mandate a light, and the developer can't just say, I'll put one there if you want one. They have to get it approved by the department. So they're doing a traffic study, and they're gonna refine that, and then they're gonna present all of that information to DOT. Because until DOT approves them even going in and out of that entrance, they have to come up with whatever means necessary to make it safe. It may not be a traffic light. It may be a deceleration lane. It may be a left-hand turn lane in the middle of Tioga Avenue where you can stack but no light. It can be a number of options. So that's still being engineered. We don't want to say definitely there's no light, but what I think we heard tonight was it's unlikely that a traffic light will be warranted because the state won't let them put one up. And as far as the sewers go, that's really not a matter for this application, and the planning board does not have that jurisdiction. We do have Where's the information available if she wanted to find out the status?
We do have a wastewater facilities plan that does describe where future sewer extensions would go. Happy to give you my contact information. We can give you that information. But yeah, that question, while a good one, wouldn't be germane to this particular application.
So they can get sewers, but we don't.
There's sewers on Tioga already. And so a project that is being developed on Tioga is required to connect to sewers. It's not that they're getting it, it's they're being required to connect to the sewer because it's there. There isn't a sewer in South Main, and I'd be very happy to receive your questions about that, but that would be separate than the matter that we're having a hearing about tonight.
One more thing, I said 2 questions, but 3. That little access road, is it really going to have a gate, or is it just going to be, people are going to use it?
They're,
Coming in and out of the apartment.
they're looking into that right
I
now.
know.
But the fire department wanted a second means of in and out because if something happened and the other one was blocked.
Definitely.
So
but
they
without a
do
gate.
have, we, generally speaking, when that happens, the planning department or planning board asks the developer to put in what's called a crash gate that stays closed unless the fire department shows up. However, we've done that recently and the fire department has said, we would prefer not to have the crash gate. We want the access, but we don't want the gate because it could cause more problems. So, and they're also looking to determine whether or not they need that secondary means, even if it's one way. And if you recall, I don't know, when I was in town, that was a one way
Yes.
when Al Max and,
Yes.
and the
He
others
was
was
there
there.
too.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, and the traffic at certain times of day, when high school gets out, is crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, do we have, Cody, do we have anybody on Zoom? Looks like we got, what, 3 people tonight on Zoom? Yep, I will, but it's okay. So this is a public hearing. If you are on Zoom to speak for or against this application and would like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any hands. Do you? I don't see any hands, so let the record show. There were no one on Zoom that raised their hand to speak at the public hearing. So that said, all those in, without objection, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Well, and through the chair, since we anticipate continuing the matter, I'd recommend we could leave public comment open.
Oh.
And when we continue, I think we'd be continuing both the matter and public comment.
Okay.
I'll ask the solicitor if that's.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I'm sorry. That's a good point. Yep, because otherwise we'd be opening it up again. Sure. So, so we won't entertain that motion. And if you'd like to come up now and make your, the other remarks that you were talking about, sure.
And just real quick, while we're on the subject of the public comment to the planning staff, we only have that one written comment in our packet. That's the only other.
Yes, that's correct.
We only have one
So we have
comment.
one written comment. It's inserted directly into the staff report. And then we obviously have the comment from the in-person tonight.
Thank you.
So unless you had any other questions, I was just going to make some
Sure.
closing kind of remarks to kind of summarize what we've heard and where we're at and what we see as, you know, to come when a decision is in the future. So we've heard from our experts. You have all the materials in there. We think this site is particularly suited to this use. We think that the town has a need for affordable units, as evidenced by your percentage not yet reaching the state required minimums. This would go a long way to get you to compliance. And this is a comprehensive permit. So like I said, it's a little bit different. A lot of comprehensive permits come in at preliminary plan. We're just at master plan here. It's discretionary to come in this manner. To the extent you're going to make findings and things of that nature, and certainly you can take from your staff and your solicitor. I'm not trying to supplement, I'm just supplementing just some thoughts about it. We're looking for findings that the standards have been met to the extent applicable at the master plan stage. So we've obviously had some conversations about traffic or about stormwater. Some things are yet to come. This wasn't meant to encompass every answer because it is master plan, just setting the stage. And like I said, overall, we believe this project has met all the standards for master plan under a comprehensive permit. It's consistent with the local needs. It balances local concerns. Also, we didn't talk too much about the affordable units, but the goal is for them to be integrated, throughout the development in accordance with the state law. And we believe there's no negative health or safety impacts as shown by the testimony. And there's adequate physical and permanent access to the site, no impractical lots. We think all those standards have been met, like I said, at the master plan level. So we just want to remember that we're really, there might be things that are coming in preliminary plan, deferred to preliminary plan. We're still at the early stages. Things are going to be engineered out as evidenced by the waivers. Some of these are saying, all right, we know we're looking at these things, but these are the waivers we think we'll need. So we believe we've met all the standards for this project and we'll be looking for a positive approval when the time comes for a vote. I know staff has a staff report. I'm not sure how you handle it from here, but.
Does anyone have any questions? I think it was this table right here I was looking for. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about the integration of all the units, and you probably at this stage have not identified which units are going to be. I'm looking at the chart just to make sure that's a correct statement, but
I think the chart more breaks down by bedroom,
right,
by
so-
building. Yeah.
right, and it breaks down by the typical square footage of the
Yep.
studio and the one bedroom. And I'm just picking this up from the statute. The size of the low and moderate income units shall not be less than 75% of the market rate units. Do you intend any deviation from these square footages where you would drop down to an area that's less, let's say some one bedroom units at 605, but the low to moderate being, let's say 80% of that number?
No, there might be
There's-
some variation in general among units, but everything will be in compliance. They be of same size as the market rate ones.
Because they do give you that flexibility.
Yep. Right now, that's not the plan. Could that change in preliminary plan when more engineering happens? Potentially. That's not the plan right now.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? The way I see it, and go ahead, did you have a question?
I had a comment.
Yeah, sure.
So we briefly talked about the density in the beginning. I know, I agree this is a fantastic site for the density. Perfect opportunity to bolster our affordable housing. For a lot of the reasons we discussed earlier, and all the information that we've gone through, you're gonna throw a tomato at me. The ask above and beyond, I know the best, that in an ideal world, 400 units, 100 affordable. Get the best use of it is to maximize the density, right? I still had concerns, and I'm very cautious about the above and beyond. I envisioned this project to be less than 400, somewhere in the 300 ballpark. And that'll open up some space on the site, ease the parking, ease the congestion. I don't know if it takes a 5-story building and makes it a 4-story building. That's your purview. If it makes 5 buildings 4, but I envisioned it something a little bit smaller, around the 300 number. And this is where you're going to throw the tomato at me. I'm sorry. We do have an affordability problem. We realize it. We're trying. The comprehensive permits are beating us up. I'd love to see 30%. I don't know if that's possible, if the numbers work for you, but that's where.
Can I ask a clarification? Would it be 30% at 400 units or 30% at 350 units? What is the, I don't want to sound like I'm at a negotiating table, but I was looking for clarity.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I think the 30% at 400, I think it defeats the purpose of my density argument, right? I'm looking at 300 units, in that 300 to 325 on the high end. If we're trying to put a dent in affordable, is 30% possible?
Well,
That's where I'm at.
It-
Those are my
yeah,
thoughts.
and I appreciate that. And I was going to kind of pull the board to kind of get a sense of where they were falling with this density and the overall presentation. But before we did that, I just wanted to make a few remarks because we've had a few of these projects come before us. Some of them, the most recent one, you know, it was like, well, what if we eliminate a building and we drop down to this many units and so forth? But we've had a few projects, and one in particular where this board was chastised for going above. They're like, the state has already dealt us a bad hand. We got all these people coming into town, and now you guys are going to approve units that are above that. We don't want to see you approve 1 unit more than what the state says we have to approve. However, I think there's a balance. I think everybody on the board recommends that there's an affordability issue. As I stated, there's definitely a need for apartments. I like the marketability aspect of 1-bedroom apartments. People that are looking for housing in this town don't have it. And I've always been a proponent, not so much of overdevelopment, but with development comes commercial uses. We've got vacant storefronts, and sometimes it's the same people that I hear in the supermarket saying, how come all these stores are empty? And they don't grasp the concept that when you have 35,000 people in town, there's only so much disposable income. And if you have a high elderly population, because you offer a senior tax freeze, the types of stores that you're getting are not going to be the types of stores that you might see in another community. So we welcome the balance, but I just wanted you to understand that we're up against some pressures at these meetings, and I'm surprised there's actually not more people here.
I'm shocked.
Should I say, I think that's a sign of the site suitability, but I don't want to overstep. Yeah.
We do believe, no,
Yeah.
I think we all do that. In fact,
Yeah.
we have,
I'm trying to find a.
in fact,
right-
you just brought something up for Mr. Clinton. Right down the street, we had a development that's going in, they call it the cornfield on the corner of Hockney Hill. And every person was like, why are they building it here? Why don't they go down the street and put it where the old
Here we are.
But there weren't 400 units. I think it was more like 125.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of where we're coming from. So I think I was just going to say you might find, because my sentiments were exactly the same here. You've got units that are on the smaller side of square footage, and maybe there's a little bit of potential to get some more affordables out of it. And as I think at least where I was alluding, when I look at the site plan and I see the way we got parking lots stretched out everywhere to get the 400 spaces and the buildings and what appears to be a lot going on in the compact area. And again, I don't care if they're 5-story buildings. I don't care if there's less buildings. I don't care if the buildings are smaller. The number of units and the number of LMI units, I think, is something that if we could refine that, I think, and find a balance so that the town feels it got, there's no overbuilding. And it's the first project, I think, of this magnitude that's come before us, other than maybe Woodland Manor. And it's unfortunate because he's still trying to get finance, and he just keeps coming in for an extension. He's got 100% LMI in the
Yeah.
back building he's got proposed. But when I go and I told Doug this, I'll throw it on the record. I work in Connecticut a lot, and I read the Hartford Courant. The number of developments that they have with exactly this type of plan apartments, they're generally on a much larger site than 18 acres. They have an access road in, they have outbuildings, they have 4 or 5-story buildings, and they're put in hundreds of units.
Can I make one clarification? We've been really looking at the plan. I understand the plan's not up right now. We've been looking at a very zoomed in picture of this site. I understand that it's compact in its design, but it actually is a very large lot that's going to have preserved kind of area that's wetlands, undisturbed. So even though we're using a small footprint, this is a larger area that's going to be buffered and things of that nature. I just want to remind everyone, because I realized as we were sitting here looking at the screen, we were focused in so everyone could see
Yeah.
the development. But really, this is a larger site. And like I said, it's going to get the benefit of a little bit of space to spread out in that sense. It is a larger site. That's the only clarification I wanted to make, because it is.
That's a good point, because
Yeah.
it is hard to see a graphic. You just can't envision.
And like I said, we really pulled in because we wanted to see the details. Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
I appreciate it. This kind of discussion goes on with every affordable housing project. Oh, by the way, Ed Pimentel for the record again. It happens all the time. And then the argument I get back when I go back for another development is, all we ever do is receive developments via the comp permit process. And I said, when we whittle down the numbers, we're just going to get more of these projects, and we're going to keep developing more of these sites. If you find that unique site that can really accommodate the density, lowering this by 100 units means that you're going to eliminate 25 affordabilities, right? It's a 25%. That means somewhere else, that 100 units or those 25 units have to be made up because you got to get to that 10% statutory compliance. I believe maximize out where it can be maximized. And I'm going to go back to it. This is why we were very conscious, because the affordable housing statute talks about 3 bedrooms, 1 parking space. We were very conscious of saying, let's make these units small, studios, 1 bedrooms. You obviously need a couple of 2 bedrooms to accommodate, because there's that group that needs it. We were, because of parking, right? So we don't disturb more of the property. And Janessa was correct. If you look at the overall site and what we've consolidated to versus what Brookside was going to do, it was very thoughtful. We put a lot of thought into this. I'm just worried we're going to whittle the numbers down and there's just going to be more of these projects. And that's why the public is constantly crying. All we ever see is permit developments.
Before I go to my colleagues, it really does come down to the numbers. But again, when you look at the site, it wasn't the compact. What I looked at was how these parking spaces were like spread out so far from the buildings and just to get the spaces in. And as I said, if you go to, and I don't discredit anything you said about the parking and viewing the other developments, I just know and I'm sorry, it's Providence Street, West Warwick. I can't remember the old, across from Bradford Soap. That's where they have the indoor parking garages with the cars double stacked and outside double. And they're just packed with parking spaces over there, and they don't have enough. In fact, there's folks that park across the street at the school. Yeah, Royal Mills at the school for their guests, and they're walking across the street pushing the crosswalk bucket. And it's the same thing up at the Harris Mill Lofts. So there was that aspect of it. But then I just did some quick math. You're right. If you take 100 units off, you go down to 300, and now you get 25% of 300. But I got to tell you something. Would you have 100 units LMI right now with 400? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, you can get 96 if you do 30% of 320.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. People are always asking, can you up the affordability? It really comes down to the fiscal impact.
Yeah.
This is why you need to get a letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing, because you have to prove a pro forma that the numbers work too.
Yeah.
People think you build in an affordable unit.
Oh, no,
and the cost.
no,
You're
you're not
building
going to
it
build it
and
and
you're-
lose money.
And you're renting it at a much reduced
Yeah,
rate
yeah.
with utilities included. But people are not aware of that, right? People are not aware of these facts, and you're carrying this for decades and decades in perpetuity, right? I appreciate what you're saying. I don't know what the bedroom makeup was of those developments, so I can't speak
Yeah,
intellectually to them. So, you
Yeah.
know,
And I think they were bigger and they were 2-bed. There were even some 3-beds in there.
that's why I
So,
say.
yep,
that's
nope,
why
you're
we
absolutely right.
concentrate on the smaller.
So that,
And Ed brought up the letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing, excuse me. That was received for this project. So that is in the file, and they reviewed the pro forma at the 400 with 25% affordable, and it was given the blessing from Rhode Island Housing. One other point of talking about the spread of the parking, as mentioned, these parking spaces could be a little smaller. That's something else we can look at to look at the scale. They were made a little bit larger than required. That's something we could look at as well.
and I don't have a problem with the offshoots, like if they're earmarked for guests,
Yep.
visitors, employees. I mean, you're going to have supers there. They talked about the trash pickup. That means you're going to have waste trucks coming in. They're going to need a spot to access the building unless they share it with the file lane. So,
But I did it too. What you're doing, I looked at, and say, for instance, the building, the Easterly building that was by itself only had 35 or 40 spaces in front of it. And if I'm the last one home at night, I don't want to park next to Burger King and have to walk past 3 buildings to get to my building. It's just going to be a snowball effect. I understand. I get it.
Those are all marketability for the developer and the person who the operator to all think about, certainly. And like Ed said, part of it's a numbers. You talked about properties coming in having trouble getting financing, things of that nature. You have to hit that sweet spot, right, where it kind of suits everybody.
okay. Yes, sir.
So I'm looking at this application as I reviewed it over the weekend, and I really think that this is quite a unique opportunity that the city has, and it's unique in several ways. One, it's apartments, which we don't have a lot of. And that also is, now we have, if we do have issues, the town has one one location to go to for those issues, unlike a lot of these condo developments that we've been having where we get a lot of individual property owners, and when problem comes up, like whatever it may be, a failed stormwater system or something like that, where we don't have someone to go to for it. I think this allows us to have that single point of contact for these big developments, which is I see as a bonus. Also, it's disconnected from any residential areas whatsoever. So, and I think that's why we really got, the one comment was about the signal and not about the development itself or the income requirements or anything like that, which is what we see on a lot of these developments that are around other residential properties. And I agree with everyone about the parking issue that we have here, but I kind of put it back again that this is going to be a single owner, and they're going to have to deal with it on their rental end. And if people don't like that, they're not going to rent from them. And there is no street parking here. There's no parking across the street. And the other adjacent commercial properties, if they're just going to end up towing cars if they start flowing into their lots and parking overnight. So a lot of these issues that we're bringing up, although are real issues, it's going to have to be the owner developer's problem, because they're the ones ultimately that need to rent these properties out. And if, like you said, you're walking halfway across the development, you're either going to stay there because you like the price, or you're going to leave and go someplace else. But otherwise, it's going to be the owner's problem, not the city's problem, like we would have in a condo development where we have individual ownership. So I think that the point of it being apartment buildings is very different from the condo developments that we're used to seeing. And that's all I have to say. But I think this is a unique situation, and I think we should try to take full advantage of it.
Anybody else?
I think for me, it's, again, you all know, for me, it's always the density issue. And I have an issue with the state law and the way it's been written and the things that are being forced on this town. This isn't the only one. We've got another 350 units potentially coming. We've got the cornfield. There's a lot of other developments that we have had to approve at the max numbers because of the way state law is. This piece of property is perfect for development. No doubt in my mind, we've all been in this town for 30 years and seen it sit there, right? It's great for an apartment building because there are really no big neighbor issues. You got sewer, you got all of that, right? Of course, there are road issues. We deal with that with the state. Police department will have to deal with issues and stuff like that. I get it. But for me, it's the density issue, and potentially the size of the buildings and the parking, like everyone else has said. But it's a perfect location for what you all are trying to do. I understand your comments on the density and the bedrooms. I agree with you 100% on that, right? But there are some issues I have with the density that we could probably work through.
Mr. Studley.
Yeah, I would also say this is a unique parcel. It's not every day that we come to a planning board meeting with 400 units and have one person speaking at the public hearing. So that does carry some weight with me. I do think that this is a unique site and that it's right for this type of development. Again, though, I just keep going back to my initial question about the density. And if we are to use the roughly 200 number, we're roughly doubling that. And what does the town get in return for the amount of density that we're being asked for? So I just think that we need to up the affordable number.
Do you have any comments on that? Because they made somewhat of a compelling argument for their calculation versus the baseline 104 units. I mean, the underlying zone, if you use even R20, I don't think it gets you to more than 200 units. But
I mean, I think that the applicant, their case is well stated. I do think staff was reporting on the density on the raw regulatory numbers we have to work with. I know the applicant is opining that the vision we've articulated in our comprehensive plan suggests this is the site we wanted to do that. Comprehensive plan documents are important, but they're guidance documents. The numbers we reflected in our staff report are meant to reflect the hard regulatory aspects of the density of bonuses. So that's where there's a difference. I do think you should be listening to what our town's adopted comprehensive plan has to say about that. And this applicant was vested. They're actually utilizing the 1999 comprehensive plan, but even at 1999, the town envisioned this site as being a focal point for density of some type. I think that's important context. I think it's important to understand that. I think that we still reflect on the regulatory requirements of this site. So I do think there's a delta between where our vision is and what the regulatory requirements are for this site. I'm enjoying the conversation right now because staff is particularly looking for guidance on where there's some consensus among the board on comfort in terms of raw counting numbers and in terms of percentage of affordable. I'm hearing some folks kind of describe a 30%. I'm hearing some folks describe they're comfortable with that perhaps at 400. Some folks describe they're more comfortable with that at 300. This would be very helpful guidance for us to get an understanding on coming into the next meeting, what might be considered suitable. And the applicant obviously can reflect on this as well in between this and the next meeting.
is the applicant open?
I'm going to take a second and talk to the team while you guys have a conversation too. I mean,
Yeah, I guess it really does, it doesn't matter. I mean, we can make our recommendation. We're probably not going to negotiate it tonight. We're not going to get through this. Can we all agree that this is probably something that warrants we want to digest it a little bit? See, and we're going to end up continuing this, I think. So I don't want to have either side negotiate against each other, bid against themselves, let's say.
Yep.
But we'll see what we can come up with a consensus. So when you leave tonight, you have at least some idea what the thinking is. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, so hopefully someone will volunteer to go first. And I appreciate everyone's comments. Because I think the consensus is this is definitely a good site for apartments. The question is how many apartments and how many LMI units, and even a range, because they've got to run numbers. So anyone want to take a stab or start or a comfort zone? Like I said,
I mean, I gave you my 330% after hearing some of the comments from the other side of the table about, don't take this the wrong way, it's your problem, those things. I agree with that. And Mr. Studley made some comments that no one in the public comment was opposed to any of this, and that does carry some weight. It is a perfect site. I'm not hard, fast, dead set 330%. That's what was my starting point, but I could work a little more, but that's where I am.
I think to Mr. Pimentel's point, I don't want to lower the number of units just to have them exist somewhere else in town. So I think I am okay with the density, but the ratio of affordables has to change.
I think I already made my stance pretty clear. I would always love to see more affordable housing, but I'm perfectly fine with the 400 density.
though as proposed, 25% and 400.
Well, I'd definitely like to see more, but I think 25 is personally, I think 25 is probably around what we've gotten the best on most of our developments. So I think that's fair.
I think density needs to go down. We are twice what we would normally grant. And we can sit here and say all day long that it is the developer's problem, but it's not. It will become the town's problem. When there are arguments between people and everything else, whether it's fire, whether it's emergency, whether it's police, the town always carries that burden eventually. I think that there has to be a lower number in density, and there has to be an increase. If we're going to stay even at 300, there has to be an increase in the number of affordable units. That's just where I stand.
You already spoke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm kind of, again, I was leaning towards, and I still am leaning towards a reduction in the number of units. And I think it would be beneficial to increase the LMI. Now, as you know, if we continue the meeting, these 5 members should be here. That's the plan, so that they can testify. We have 2 more, but I think you've got a good sample from there. And I don't think we're going to be able to provide a specific number of units or percentage. And I think that gives you an opportunity to go back and run some numbers, not to try to guess where the board was going to come, but you'll be able to come up with a range, because when you get to the point that you lower the units and you increase the LMI, you're going to say the project's no more viable, and now you're not getting anything. I mean, let's face it, that's what it's all about.
Exactly. We'll take this all under advisement, take some time to think about it, and see what really makes this project feasible, and it can work for everyone.
And I'm not going to speak for my colleague, but I think we both recognize that too. There is a point where it is not worth building. I don't think any of us want to see that, because that property needs to be developed.
Yeah, I think we've got the message that you guys like the suitability of the site.
Yeah, we do. And so we're at this point now where we would make someone will make a motion to continue, and we want a date certain on that, Mr. Solicitor. The date that we said were available, I think, when we polled everybody earlier, was September 14th. That's a Monday.
Yep.
It's a special meeting. It wouldn't be the next regular meeting, just for
Correct.
the record, because there's a conflict for some members on that date.
That's correct. We would be continuing to a date certain, September 14th. It's a Monday, and we would not have this appear on a regular meeting in August. We don't need that for control purposes. I'd rather just continue it to a date when we feel we're ready to have the full conversation.
And this will
If
be-
that's
Yep.
still the pleasure of the board.
Yes, it is. And this would be the first item on the agenda, if anything else comes along, but there's a likelihood it'll be the only item on the agenda. But every once in a while, we have an emergency or something comes up, we'd like to get it heard for the council or whatever. So, all
Understood.
right, that being said, I'll entertain a motion to continue this matter, including the public hearing, to a date certain of Monday, September 14th, 2026.
And we just note that'll be at 6:30 PM in this particular room. We feel comfortable this room will be available.
Yep, 6:30 PM in this room. Do I have a motion to continue?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue this matter continue this matter and the public hearing to Monday, September 14th, 6:30 PM.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And I have a second by Mr. Price. And do we have any further discussion on the motion to continue? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion for a 5-minute recess?
Yes, let's take a 5-minute recess. Then we'll talk kennels. Okay, planning, the planning commission is now reconvened at 8:50. Next item on the agenda is, and I'm sorry, do you got your agenda handy? I put mine away.
Yes.
Okay, just to look quickly, is item 7.1, ordinance, recommendation of the town council for discussion, vote, or other action, ordinance 2026-17 sub A, amending 255-200 definitions, standard interpretations, 255-9110 supplemental regulations, kennels, and 255-600 zoning district use and dimensional regulations, the schedule of zoning district use regulations. This proposed zoning code amendment will allow the use of dog kennels in specific zones and establish new supplementary regulations for kennels and outdoor enclosures. So what we have in front of us is a memorandum dated July 16th from the planning department. And then we have a markup of those items that I just talked about. Do we have any commentary or?
Yeah, I can offer just a brief introduction. This matter, as you may recall, received a neutral recommendation and noted concerns that this board had when it sent the communication to the council. At the council hearing, there were some concerns noted on the record. The council expressed that it also did not feel comfortable with the kennel code as drafted. It did two things. It, one, recommended that it be revised and that a revised version be brought back to this board for reconsideration of a recommendation. And then it did continue the matter to the council's meeting in August 25th. That's why you're seeing it here, because this is our only meeting prior to their August meeting. So we got ahead of it. We drafted a pretty significant rewrite, and I'd like to just at a real high level touch on what's changed about this kennel code. The biggest thing that's changed, and this is per guidance, we heard it from you and we heard it from the council, that you wanted to be a more conservative approach. And the way we accomplished that is we broke kennels into many different categories. You'll see that we broke kennels into categories where there's 4 to 5 dogs. Keep in mind, 3 dogs is just an allowed residential use. There's code that suggests that once you get the 4th dog, you're more than just a residential user. And they have a waiver process through animal control where you can seek a 4th dog through a waiver. There's no way to get a 5th dog without calling yourself a kennel. But we felt if you're in that area of 5 dogs or under, you're likely just someone that has additional pets. Maybe you're someone that's taking care of another person's dog for a while. It's something that it's a different context than what we would assume is an operating business. So we have a category for kennels, we call them kennels, for 5 dogs and under. There's a category for kennels of 6 to 10 dogs, and that's a medium size. And then there's a category for 11 to 20 dogs. You're not allowed to have more than 20 dogs. We also broke it up into different, there's the concept of some businesses or some operations might say we only want to take care of the dogs during the day. And some operations might say we want to offer overnight boarding. So those categories, 4 and 5 dogs, 6 through 10, 11 through 20, those same categories are carried with whether you're doing it daytime only or whether you're offering overnight. And then the most intensive of all of them is a true breeding kennel. And that's a kennel where you're allowed up to 20 dogs, you're allowed overnight, and you're also allowed to breed for the purposes of sale. You're a commercial breeder. And in those instances, those commercial breeding operations, if you have dogs under the age of 6 months, we allow the under the age of 6-month dogs to not be counted against the cap. It's hard for a breeder to have a certain number of dogs, then expect puppies and to know exactly how many other dogs need to leave before the puppies arrive. So we understood that as a breeder, you have a need for that. The approach that is more conservative is that the only type of kennel that's allowed in every zoning district is that kennel where it's 5 dogs and under. That's allowed in all zoning districts. Once you get to more than 5 dogs, it's not allowed in our densest residential zones of the R20 or the RR2. And that was based on specific feedback that we were hearing is our dense residential zones, we wanted to limit that. So if you want to have 6 dogs, you can't do it in those dense residential zones. There's a range of other ways that we changed our regulations with all these gradations of kennels. We also changed the gradations of separation distances. So if you want to have a kennel and it's a small kennel, it's a smaller separation distance that animal run has to be from a property line. The bigger the kennel, the bigger the separation distance. So even those bigger kennels, even if they're in the RR5, we still want to ensure the kennel would be a significant distance away. We are still looking at the highest separation distance is 300 feet. That's something that can certainly be discussed if that's seen as sufficient. We do allow roosters to be sited on properties 300 feet away from property lines. So to some degree, we have a comparable in our code that exists for an animal that has the ability to create quite a bit of noise and where there's comfort from separation distance. That's enough of an overview for those of you that might have looked at the details. I mean, curious to get your reactions. At the end of the day, your role is as it was before. You're providing an advisory recommendation to the town council. I just note we've got Animal Control Officer Lacombe here with us. She's been, basically a resource with us to understand this better. She's on the ground every day. As planners, we understand land use regulation approach, but she understands the real impacts of this. Part of the idea of kennels is that we can regulate it with zoning, but she's interested in also ensuring she has a good handle on the licensing components of this. There are elements of understanding if someone should earn a license as a kennel operator, and they may be factors that they can consider different than zoning. Maybe the history of that kennel, the history of that operator. Do they have any issues on their history? That could be considered in licensing. That will be discussed with the council so they understand what issues and concerns might be better handled in zoning versus what issues might be better handled in licensing. But that's enough of an introduction from me. Happy to take any questions. Ultimately, we're seeking for you to provide an advisory recommendation to the council for the August 25th meeting.
Thank you for that. I just want to, I will go to the board for questions in a second, but while this is fresh in my mind, are residences allowed in the VRC and VMC zone?
Yeah, we currently do allow single-family homes in the VRC and the VMC.
Because I found it interesting that like a medium daycare kennel is not permitted in the R20, the RR2, but it is permitted in the VRC and the VMC, and some of those lots can be somewhat small or be extremely close to areas. And again, that's just my observation, if I understood that correctly.
It's a good question. One of the factors we looked at was the minimum lot size of all of these zones, and you're right, particularly the VMC has a small lot size. The other component we look at is in that zone, you're allowed to open a range of commercial uses. So we were calculating both lot size as a consideration, how small is the lot is a consideration for whether you should have a kennel, but also if that same property can open a range of intensive businesses and you happen to be a resident that lives near there, there's a range of by right uses that can be achieved. That balances our consideration of, is that an appropriate place for a kennel as well? You can weigh it against, for example, a commercial condo unit and, other uses that might carry noise or intensity. So we did weigh the concept of in a residential zone, we should be very thoughtful that this is only strictly for residential users or these other range.
I just think it's harder to enforce the noise ordinance when you're dealing with puppies after 7, 8 o'clock, or there's another use such as a commercial condo. They would be prohibited from conducting certain activities after that hour. That's just a note. And then the other question, and I think you touched on it, is the council looking, because it sounds like this particular zoning ordinance is drawing a lot of public comment and concern about the adverse impacts that could be realized if certain things occur that might be better regulated by licensing than land use. And I'm just wondering if simultaneously with this, taking those comments they may receive or we receive, because I'm sure the last meeting was lengthy and some of the council people looked at it. Are they considering any changes to the licensing regulations so that they can maybe better get a handle on what some of the concerns were with the butters? Hey, if you allow this, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And then we say, yeah, well, most times it won't, but if it does, they violated the terms of their license and the license will be revoked and then they won't be able to have it. So that's kind of where I was going. And if you recall at the last meeting, I almost suggested a work session to discuss both the ordinance pertaining to zoning and the licensing requirements so that maybe between the two, we could satisfy some of the concerns of the folks that spoke against having kennels, for lack of a better statement, practically anywhere in town.
Yeah, the licensing component, I think, is it's fair to say that as part of a zoning amendment hearing, there's only so far we can do to mix it and suggest specific licensing. I do think that the council is going to be aware of what types of issues can be handled with licensing, so they gain an understanding of certain types of controls and restrictions that can be used to apply. Obviously, I don't think they're looking to run a simultaneous consideration of licensing changes and code changes, but this might set the stage for what they may wish to do in moving forward. I know Animal Control Officer Lacombe does weigh in on kennels, and kennels do have to come back for renewal licenses. Am I speaking correctly there?
Yes, if they ask.
Okay.
Hopefully, what comes out of our discussion tonight, regardless of which way we make a recommendation, if there's public comment like there was the last time, and it carries through to the council when this ordinance is being heard, if they hear concerns that could be addressed through licensing, hopefully they'll address them. Because we're just putting a recommendation forward as to the land use here, and I don't want to get caught up in being the stopgap for every single issue that could possibly come up.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. It is true that there's alternative tools that can be used to regulate this land use. It is a land use that's subject to licensing. It is a land use that has unique components, the care of the animals, the sanitation issues. And, I frankly, like whether there's any history that suggests that there's anyone that has a record where there might be a concern of care of the animals. All of that stuff is outside of the boundaries of zoning, but all of that stuff can be perhaps considered in licensing, and we're not here to speak about those details.
And exactly, and the point I was trying to make, and I'll speak very briefly. We have a lot of applications that come to us, and the concern of the neighbors is they're going to be in there after 7 o'clock at night. It's a very noisy business. And what do we say? We say, well, we have ordinances that deal with that. So if this passes tonight, you have another means of enforcement. I don't know what the kennel regulations are. I don't know the licensing requirements. So hopefully if those same types of things come up, those concerns, they can be dealt with correctly by the town council and not the land use experts, which is the planning commission. Anyone else? Mr. Price.
Two questions. In here, it's reading the setback distance, 150 feet from other residential property, 250 feet from other residential property.
You have to help me. Which particular size?
Like lines 89, 90, lines 96, and 300 feet, line 102 from
Yep.
any other residential
I'm
property.
following you. Yep.
Do you mean from the property line or from the dwelling?
Well, we define that the distance is from the property line to the area dedicated to where the animals are
So
housed.
if they have a large boarding kennel and it's 300 feet, that means you need to have a 600 by 600 lot easily. That's 360,000 square feet. That's 8 acres minimum. And you
Yeah.
have on the chart
Yeah,
5 acres.
that's true. So 300 feet does indicate that you're going to need a big lot not to need relief, and you would need to be 300 feet. The animal area, which could include the outdoor run, needs to be 300 feet from all property lines. So yeah, we are talking about.
So you need to revise your chart on minimum lot size.
We certainly can. We didn't want to preclude the concept that, there's somebody that might have unique circumstances and meet the 300 feet with a lot that might be smaller than that. But what you're suggesting is if you have to have 600 by 600,
600 by 600 would be the minimum lot size.
well, I mean, we could do the math. For the RR5, for example, you have a minimum lot size of 5 acres. Are you suggesting that
If you're
someone should not be
600 by 600 is 360,000 square feet.
Yep.
360,000 square feet divided by acres comes up to roughly, I don't know, 8 acres. I'm just doing that in my head.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think we're very happy to amend this to make it as restrictive as the board would see fit. I would say that if someone had, let's just say, a 6-acre parcel in the RR5, and they met 300 on all sides but one, and on one side they were at 200, they would need a variance, and they could come to this
Or you
board for
could
that
come, like,
variance.
closer to the street and count the width of the street as the distance from another property line or something.
And one thing is
The
actually, to
town
be
reg-
clear, is when we measure these distances, it's distances from residential properties. So it's possible you have some
Surrounded by
some
commercial
surrounding
property.
parcels that don't have a residential structure. Maybe it's a state park, a state open space. And in
Okay,
those
I
contexts,
got it.
we wouldn't apply the 300.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
and
understand.
it's not intended to help a person that has 5 acres. It says you have to have, you're in the R5 zone, so you have to have a minimum 5 acres. If to get the kennel in there with that many,
You
the
have to
size
have
kennel
both.
you want, you got to have 8 acres. You just have to
Minimum-
be in the R5 zone.
Yeah, so, okay, I understand where you're coming from then. That makes sense to me.
To be quite frank, we did toy with increasing the minimum lot size, but I think it's better to be thoughtful on what's the thing we're regulating. Do we need it to be a big lot, or do we need to know that it's far away from residential?
Yeah, so what I'm saying, so if you had a commercial lot on one side of your residential lot,
Yeah.
and residential on the other, you can push the kennel towards the commercial lot.
Correct.
Okay.
And they can always apply for a variance.
Yeah. The second question is, what about ADUs? If they have an ADU, 2 separate houses, where in one house has 3 dogs and the other house has 3 dogs? How does that work? Or do you count them as like apartments where each one can have 3 dogs or?
No, because this code is written on a per property basis, and ADUs by definition actually have to be on the same lot. We would suggest that the 3 houses, or the 3 dogs in the ADU, the 3 dogs in the regular house, that's 6 dogs. Now, we would say you're a medium dog kennel and you're subject to all those regulations.
Okay. Just wanted to, okay.
Yeah, and we'll have people that might say, I
That-
want to run a dog kennel between 6 to 10. It's a business. I want to have dogs in and out. It's going to be busy. That's my business. And we might have some people that'll come in front of the board and say, I have 3 dogs. My grandma who's living in the ADU has 3 dogs. Our lot isn't big enough to accommodate the separation distances. Our dogs are quiet. Can we seek a variance? And then you get to take all of the context of that ask into mind. But on a single property, once they're more than 5 dogs, they're heading for a fairly heavy regulatory approach. And to be honest, I mean, some of it, we tried to be very conservative because that was the feedback we're hearing. You can imagine there might be property owners where they have 6 dogs and we're telling them, you can't live in this zoning district at all. Or it could be considered a use variance to get a 6th dog. So we are pretty strict.
That would be above and beyond what the officer can allow. It'd have to go to the town for the variance.
Yeah.
Would come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would.
Okay.
It would come here because we do consider kennels as a land development project. It is fair to say we're talking about a use that does tend to find itself in these larger corners of residential zones. But the use, we are considering a commercial use. So if someone wanted to start a new kennel, even if someone said, I want to take on a 6th dog, and we would say, okay, well, you're technically now operating a kennel. We're going to assume it's some sort of minor land development, depending on the square footage, combined with a variance. It comes to you as Unified Development Review. These kennels would be reviewed as if they're commercial operations. We'd be reviewing the size of their runs and dictating, the terms of that. It'd go through TRC, all of it.
Yep, and the officer would be available to us
Yeah.
to review and to give input and.
We're fortunate that she has a good handle on this and is very happy to assist and is, I think, would be eager to get comments. Basically, through TRC, I think this would be the kind of case where someone has a big new kennel application. Let's just say they want up to 20 dogs. They want to breed. They've got a site. The site meets some zoning parameters. We're going to want to know and get comments at TRC what's going on. And even if it doesn't need a variance, there are certain circumstances where you guys may see it as a minor land development. You'll see comments on it as well.
Okay, thank you.
So to piggyback those comments, the only I highlighted here, if you could provide some context on it, commercial in a residential.
Yep.
Commercial breeding kennel.
Yep.
Up to 20 dogs.
Yep.
And I'm focused on the word commercial.
Sure.
Allowable in an RR5.
Yep.
Because that's kind of like contradicting to me.
Yep. I think that's something that it had historically been associated with. I think I don't want to put Animal Control Officer Lacombe. There's a certain number of kennels we have in town, and I think there's a number of them that might be in the western residential area.
Yes, I believe there's like 4, probably, Western.
Or just
classified
as kennels.
Classified as kennels. Breeding commercially, there's 1 breeding, and then there's another that's boarding.
So I'd say,
Because I'm just looking at the breeding as a business.
I mean, it's funny, if you were to say, Doug, would we allow restaurants to open in the RR5? I'd say, no, that's crazy. And you're asking, well, if you're treating this like a commercial use, now it is a unique type of commercial use. It is the kind of use that you do find people can run out of a household with a fenced enclosure. This would mean that if someone had a kennel in the RR5 and they wanted to make a modification, the modification is something that we could consider. If it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, which is they're allowed to continue using their kennel, but if we say it's not allowed in the zone, technically any action they take, even to modify it, even not to expand it, we start to toy with they're modifying a pre-existing non-conforming use, and there's not a lot of allowances for that. So I think there's just a recognition it's a unique type of use. We're going to treat it and regulate it like commercial, but it happens to be a commercial use that in the context of Coventry has found itself in Western Coventry, and there are appropriate sites. If the other choice we have is to suggest that kind of kennel is not allowed in those zones, it would be an easy change to make. We would just say the large scale kennels in RR5, we're just going to say no.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, the type of kennel that you're describing at a maximum of 20 dogs doesn't seem like a business that is self-sustainable and profitable from a primary income standpoint. This seems these kennels are more of a side job or a retirement job or something like that. I don't see this as something that can be supported by a regular commercial business renting commercial properties and manning it 24/7, because if it's on a commercial property, now it can't be residential. You can't have people living there, right? So,
We had 1 commercial kennel in Coventry, Town Road. They're no longer operating.
yeah, so it kind of,
Any more kennels where you board overnight up to 20 dogs?
yeah, so it doesn't seem to me like a business that is very sustainable from a commercial. And I think that's why it kind of goes with residential property, because it's more of a business for a side business type income.
I'm sorry, anyone else? Comments, concerns?
Yeah, my comment is, so the council kicked this back to us.
Correct.
And I was of the assumption that we were going to have a work group, possibly bring them in. I would like to see this broken into 2 pieces, 1 commercial and 1 for residential.
What do you mean?
1 ordinance for how many dogs you can have as a resident for the animal control officer, and then 1 that addresses the commercial use of kennels.
So
we generally have regulated it by size. And it's fair to say that the business relationship of someone that might keep up to 5 dogs, it may be hard to know. For example, someone might have 3 dogs, and then they agree to take care of their neighbor's 2 dogs. They agree that they're going to do it for $100 fee. Is that a commercial operation now?
Yes.
So then that's
If they're gaining
information-
income from it, that's a commercial operation.
And so that's interesting, right? So if that's making income, but when we regulate things, we aren't privy to the private agreements of people. And we would be more interested in the concept of where are people parking? Do you have a parking area? Or we might regulate it differently. If someone said, no, this is a business, I'm going to be doing this regularly. I'm going to be running an operation. There are doggy daycares where they might base it out of a location, and I've seen them, and then they take the dogs they get into a van, they go to different houses, they pick up the dogs, they take all the dogs to, I think, some dog run where it's a fenced-in enclosure, it's known as like a dog play park, then they bring them all back.
But when they bring them back, these dogs have to be registered by the town.
Yeah.
So you know who the owner of the dog is. You know whether that dog belongs in that house or not. Because that dog technically has to be registered, does it not?
Yes, but then now we're opening up to, what about rescue breeders? People who ship dogs up and have 5, 6, 7, 8 dogs in their house, maybe for a day, maybe for a week, maybe for a month.
But then if you went to that house, they would have some documentation that they're a rescue breeder, that they're doing this temporarily, wouldn't they?
Right, but how do we regulate? They don't know how long the dog's going to be there for. Could just be there overnight. Could be there for a month until it gets adopted, 2 months. We don't know if it's a commercial, if they're making money off of it. We don't.
But we can still regulate whether they're making money or not. Then that becomes a conversation that you would have with them to come up with something, right? But it still can be regulated. There's still requirements for dog licenses. There's still requirements for a whole host of things, right? They would, if they're bringing a dog from another state here, there would be something that they have that says, yeah, I'm a rescue breeder. I'm only going to have him temporarily. Again, I don't consider that necessarily commercial if
They
they're
get a
just
kennel
doing that.
license? Do
What's
they
that?
get a kennel license?
I mean, to be
That's my
Probably
point.
so.
the way our code would read,
Probably so, because what do they do with waste? What do they do with all these others? What do
way
they
our
do with
code reads-
vaccinations?
is for any circumstance, the second you have 6 dogs, our code would read, you better make sure that you're in accordance with this code.
Right.
Which means you better make sure that they're in an enclosure, that you have to be in the correct zone for any circumstance.
So,
But that's the key is it can be very hard to define. Let's say someone has 6 dogs and they claim, but I'm doing it as a favor for a neighbor and it's not a commercial operation. We would say
But
the code.
the code says you can't have more than 5. They're in violation.
Correct. So
of
we
the
would
code.
say it's indifferent to whether that person took money. Let's say, one of these circumstances, you have someone that ends up taking care of their friend's dogs. Let's say they have 3 and their friend has 3. The second they're all in one household, technically we have a kennel. One of these people says, I'd like $100, for my neighbor as a friend, as a favor to, to help whatever, my costs to help take care of the animal. One of them says, I don't want money. To me, we would regulate it the same either way.
Yes.
But when you ask the question, I want to regulate these differently, residential or commercial, keep in mind, I'm not sure what we would do differently for the person that's taking the $100 or not.
We may not know. There's a lot of people that do things under the table.
that's where the
The fact
licensing
is, the
comes.
license says, the ordinance says you can only have 6. You can then tell them, or 5, you can then tell them that dog has to leave.
But
So my question is, what would we do if we were to revise this and have a residential version and a commercial version? How would we frame it differently than what it is now?
We'd set the number, which is a lot less than what it would be for a kennel. And the requirements for a kennel would be a lot less than somebody in a residential area.
So is the comment, when you say you want to break it down from a commercial perspective and residential, are you saying in residential zones, you want to make it illegal to have a commercial operation?
I don't think we should have commercial kennel in a residential zone.
Okay. So what that would look like is we can't regulate whether someone, if they're taking care of dogs and let's say there's 5 dogs, it's hard for us to regulate whether they've taken money to take care of 5 dogs or not. What we can do is we can say at 5 dogs, whether they took a little bit of money or not, that's a low threshold of activity. And we've made the case that regardless of whatever business operation has occurred, that is something that we were saying is appropriate in residential zones.
Residential, the animal control officer is going to go in there and ask them whether or not they're taking money for anything. What I'm saying is for a residential zone, it's 5 dogs.
Yep.
Period. Anything above that, they would have to come and get a license for personal use of that animal.
Wait.
If they
Anything
wanted
above
a
that-
fifth, if they wanted a 6th dog, right, they may have to come before the council for a specific license to go above the 5.
That's kind of where I was going earlier, with all due respect, because I don't want to get too hung up. But what we're talking about, I mean, let me put it in this way. If somebody violates the zoning code, which is what's before us, there's a whole myriad of enforcement. If it's a licensing issue, you call the police, they go out there, how many dogs you got? What are you doing? You're violating your license. You had a license to do this. If the council wants to come up with a license for rescue people, for people that are going to breed, whatever they are, they can give out all the types of licenses they want, and it just becomes an enforcement issue with them. It's not a land use.
Well, the trick is it is a land use, and that's zoning is regulating it as it's a land use.
Right, but it is. But on top of that, there's another layer of protection that could go in through the licensing. You couldn't operate, I'm going to take in 3 of my neighbor's dogs once a week because I'm basically boarding dogs on the side, and I'm not telling that you got to have a license. That's my point. And if you don't have a license, you're going to get a phone call, you're going to knock on the door, and they're going to say, you're violating your license. You don't have a license for this. That's it.
And the way this is written, if you're someone that you have 3 dogs, you're taking care of somebody else's 3 dogs, whether you're doing it for money, whether you do it regularly, at that moment in time, for example, if you're in the R20 district and you have 6 dogs on your property, it becomes a zoning violation at that moment in time. The oddity of it is it's a zoning violation that someone, we might say, yeah, here's a zoning violation, you have to correct it. They said the dogs are going to be gone by Monday because I was only, like it becomes awkward, but it would technically be a zoning violation for that moment in time. And that's the tool that regulates it so that we understand no matter what licensing does, you're not allowed to have this many dogs together in these residential districts. And so right now, we could make it more conservative if that's the will of this commission. And we could say that the range of dogs between any number, we purposely picked 5 and under because we felt comfortable to say that really feels like that's more of a residential context. That feels like someone's not really doing this as running a business. They either just a dog lover, they have more dogs themselves, they find themselves maybe taking care of a friend's dog. That's where we felt comfortable. That use should just be allowed in every zone. Now, once we get to the 6 to 10, we did allow it in some of the larger rural residential zones, but we can change that and we could just, any amount of dogs greater than 5, we can say it's just not allowed in any of the other residential zones. That's a more conservative approach than we have, which we can do. We broke it into that middle group because we thought where kennels tend to find themselves now.
But did you get any guidance from the council on this?
But again, this is exactly where I didn't want us to go right now. That's why there needs to be a workshop. They kicked it back to us,
Yeah.
right? We should have a workshop where we invite them down.
Yeah, no, they.
Otherwise, this thing is going to keep on going back and forth between us, them, then back to us, and then back to you guys, putting you all in the middle without any true guidance on what the council wants. So we should force this issue and hold a workshop, inviting the council members to the workshop so we can settle exactly what they want done instead of putting them in the middle of this.
They kicked it to Doug. That's what they didn't.
Well, no, they kicked it back to us.
Well, I mean, it's fair to say we did hear concerns and there was some consensus amongst both this group and the council that they wanted to see a more conservative approach. And there was discussion and they wanted to see breaking kennels up into subcategories of kennels. So I think we've made great progress there. Now, whether this is the right ordinance or not, I mean, I might suggest we could take public comment and that might help guide us. I might suggest that we could tell the council when we get back to August 25th, which is what this has continued, that we need more process. I'd only suggest that it's worthwhile. We put time and effort into getting this far. I'd like to know if this board feels good about what we have. And then if we get to the council and the council is still not really confident this is the right approach, and the council really feels like more work is needed, at that point, I agree. We do our best to kind of serve the boards up, and then we utilize the existing meetings. I mean, I'm going to be asking the board for 2 meetings in September. You haven't seen the other work that's coming your way. Obviously, we're going to be looking at a comprehensive plan amendment soon for an entire housing chapter. You haven't seen the other work that's coming your way. I want to be respectful of the board's time and resources. So I want to see if we can do this kennel without perhaps a dedicated work session. But if we get there and August 25th, the council isn't satisfied, then I think that's really the only real next step, is because it's hard to draft these things without knowing where the comfort is from the decision makers.
Oh, I think that's our problem. But with that being said, if no one else has anything else, I'd like to move it to public comment, because I know if there's 3 people on Zoom, that's probably what they're here for.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to open public comment.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Member Price
If you have
to open the public. Is this a public hearing or public comment? I don't have my agenda. I'm sorry. Neither. Okay. To hear from the public, we have a motion by Member Price, a second by Member Burke. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Okay. There's no one in the audience, so I'll go right to Zoom. Okay, I see a hand up. Cheryl, if you'd like to come, come on in. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, hello. Name is Cheryl Kane, 185 Reach Schoolhouse Road. You know how I feel about this.
Yep.
I
Could you just speak up a little bit, okay, please?
Oh, sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. You know how I feel about this. When it comes to the kennels, I feel that they should not be in residential neighborhoods. I don't believe any commercial businesses should be in residential neighborhoods. As you know, I always kind of go back to the town ordinance of the customary home occupation ordinance. I do feel that not everyone is comfortable with dogs. There's a lot of people that are afraid of dogs. They might be, like I said, even when it comes to all the barking and all the noise, people that have mental issues, PTSD. When you live in a residential neighborhood, you do expect a certain type of living, safety, quality of life, as I normally say. I can go on, but I will not at this time. I will, again, speak before at the town council meeting. I want to say thank you for thinking about us, for thinking about the taxpayers of Coventry. And I do know there's a process for this. I also know that the town council can restrict the number of kennels in the town of Coventry. I also, years ago, and I think it is to this day, you were only allowed 3 dogs per household. If you had wanted another dog and you had a 4th dog, and that was because one of your dogs were going to pass away, it was old, then that was allowed. You could have a 4th dog, but no more than that. And it's a safety issue. When when you have all these dogs in these homes, if you have people walking down the street, you're going to have 5 dogs in each household. I mean, a lot of people have dogs nowadays. So if you increase the amounts, they will have these dogs. If they can afford them or not, you know how people are. So I really thank you for thinking about this, and I hope you have a deeper conversation about this. Thank you so much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom that wants to speak on this proposed ordinance? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Okay, so we'll move on. I don't know if we needed a motion before, so just to kind of wrap it up, I guess we'll entertain a motion to close further public comment on this issue.
I'll make a motion to close public.
Motion
comment.
by Member Price, second by Member De Silva. Any discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, anyone have any last minute thoughts? And I'm open to pretty much anything regarding a recommendation to the town council. Favorable, unfavorable, no recommendation.
It's got to be favorable or unfavorable. No recommendation is exactly what got this sent back to us the other day without them even entertaining any conversation on it.
So is the gut feeling that this ordinance needs more work as written to reduce the activities in some of the zones as written?
You're saying provide further restrictions? Or
Yes.
create further restrictions?
Yes.
That's the feeling I'm getting.
Okay, well, if someone feels that way, then we could make an unfavorable recommendation and for that reason, and we'll kick it back, and then that'll hopefully get us where we want to be.
And I might ask, I mean, if the idea is that no kennels in any residential zone, you could also suggest that you would provide a favorable recommendation, assuming that amendment was made, and staff can make that amendment and bring it as a sub B to the council. And the one thing that we have as our benefit to hopefully can avoid this continually going around in circles is we've gotten closer, but we now have an idea that we can break this into a menu of options. Let's say, for example, the council's comfortable with up to 5 dogs in certain residential zones. Well, now it's easy for them to articulate that. If the council concurs, there should be no more than 3 dogs in any property in any residential zone, then we can still utilize this ordinance and say those categories are going to get a no in those zones. And then the council can consider whether amongst its business zones, if it wants to regulate it differently. So at least there's a menu of options in which we can get a little bit more specific feedback that might help this. If there's something that this commission feels strongly should be changed, my thought is you can just articulate it. And if it's as simple as, I don't feel comfortable with more than 3 dogs in any residential zone, that's an easy change to make. We just keep in mind that we balance these things. So most of the people that might be in that category of 4 or 5 dogs are largely, it is true, and Animal Control Officer Lacombe here can attest, 3 dogs is allowed, 4 dogs is a special exception to her, and 5 dogs would not be allowed. So we created a category that really captures that, someone that's not likely doing this from a professional standpoint.
But even, all I'm thinking about is the person that has, let's say, a golden retriever or a doodle dog that are someone in high demand, and they breed the dog twice a year, and they have puppies, and they sell the puppies, and they make money. I mean, there's people that do that.
Yeah.
And to say they're not allowed, you're basically banning that business across the entire town, every zone, even the RR5 if you have 20 acres in a barn.
But keep in mind, you know that carve out that we suggested in the code if there's a puppy under 6 months.
Yeah.
We actually, that only applies to the breeding kennels. So really, most puppy litters might be more than 5 dogs. What this is also doing is it's really ruling out anybody from having a dog that has puppies out of their home. Now, some people might say that's great. That's the regulatory approach we should have. And some people might say that feels too restrictive. But that's where we're at now is if a dog had puppies, we're counting every puppy as a dog. Suddenly that property needs to account for whatever number of dogs exist. The breeding kennels, since we know that's an operation, we assume that that's a big operation. They can, if a dog has puppies, they would be able to accommodate that.
But the thought of banning in every residential zone is every zone, even RR5. Anytime you have more than
Yeah.
3
And I
dogs.
mean, that is an approach, if it's articulated, is easy to change this code to do. We could articulate that those categories of kennel, the small kennels, could be not allowed in any residential zone. And really it comes down to, that's the comment that we've received would suggest that that would be the direction we should go, that once you're at that 4 to 5 dog range, we're going to say, nope, you need to be in a commercial zone. And if that's the will of this board, that's an easy change to make to this code.
Or they come get a variance. Can they come get a variance? Land use variance?
What's tricky
Bar
is
would
the
be
way we're
too high.
handling this, it might be use variances.
Yeah, use.
That'd be a debate that some future applicant could make whether I'm allowed, I have 3 dogs, I want 5. Is that a dimensional variance or use variance? Some people might make that argument. Either way, it'd be a variance. They'd have to notify neighbors. There'd be an ability for there to be a hearing, the whole 9 yards.
But it wouldn't outright ban it 100%. They have one avenue, one shot to come to us for a use variance.
Yeah, if someone wanted to have that, let's say the 5th dog, they have an ability to come for a use variance. Keep in mind, a use variance, as this board might be aware, the standard is so high that if there was any opposition to a use variance, I generally make sure the board understands that, you know, this is easily
Well,
overturned.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets us past the hurdle of if all the neighbors don't complain, then.
Yeah. So, I mean, but if the will of the board is, let's not allow it in residential, we can do that.
I just wanted to make it clear because all residential is some fairly large lots and properties that are in a much rural area on farms and things like that where folks might have it. But it doesn't matter to me. I don't have a dog. I don't consider myself to be an animal lover, but I'm just being honest. Yeah. No, that's all right. No, I just want to, again, I think this really falls in the council's purview more than us because as the last person said, I'm saving my comments for the council because they're the ones that actually are going to adopt the ordinance. And I think they have other regulatory avenues through licensing if they don't want to make this restrictive. So our recommendation is not necessarily what they have to follow.
No, I mean, I think that's fair. I do think it's fair. The council, when they knew that there were concerns articulated by this board, they were interested in bringing it back to this board, I think, to better vet that. I would love to see if this board has a version of this ordinance that it believes warrants a positive. I think that's good communication. So your positive might say, if you amend this, we'll give it a positive. That is good communication to the council. You also might say, we feel comfortable as written and sending it along with a positive, understanding that at this point, the hairs that might be split are really up to the council's discretion.
If I could just jump in real quick, if we're to not allow any kennels, regardless of whether it's to be residential use or commercial use, I do think that there should be some sort of carve out for a temporary use. It stands to reason that if somebody does have 3 or 4 dogs, they're a dog lover, they would be asked to maybe watch a neighbor's dog on occasion. I think that there should be some sort of carve out on a temporary basis that they can maybe make application for to have an additional dog or 2 on site at any given time.
Well, at this point, we got to do something. So we're going to be here like the last time. And honestly, let's just decide what we're going to do and move favorable, unfavorable, favorable with restrictions, unfavorable. And if you fix this, we might be able to live with it. I don't know.
So I think we're all in agreement with restricting kennels in residential and sending giving a favorable on the remaining ordinance, but we're going to. Does this sound right?
Oh, yeah, but when you say restrict kennels in residential, do you mean, so there's keep in mind the sizes of kennels. A small kennel is up to 5 dogs. So between that 4 to 5 dog category, would you restrict that in residential?
If you're considering the current regulation, which is 3 dogs, 4th with permission of the animal control officer, and no dogs more than that in any residential zone, only in commercial, that's what it is.
I think that's what we agree on. No.
Again, I'm one.
Well, what do you agree? That's what I'm trying to get at.
What I agree is we should have, from the very beginning, and Doug and I have had this conversation, we should have had a work group because what we're doing is we're sitting here and we're spitballing again.
Yeah.
And we're going to come up with something that's going to go back. All right. From the very beginning, we should have done this as a thorough process. inviting them and coming up with something. So again, they don't have to sit down and do it every time. This is the planning commission. That's our job. That's what we are tasked to do. And if that means we got to have 2 meetings and 3 meetings, then that's what we got to do. That's my 2 cents. But if
The only way to get there, I think, is to just vote this down as an unfavorable recommendation and suggest exactly that and be done.
But again, here's the dilemma. Yes, but unfortunately, they've put a whole lot of work in this, right? And now we're going to give it an unfavorable to the,
Which was my fear at the last month.
That bothers me because they've done a lot of work on
I
this.
didn't want to scrap the whole thing.
Right.
I mean, my suggestion might be this. If there, truthfully, if there's a desire for a work session, I think I'm hearing from this board that you'd be open to it. As a legislative item, we generally would be in the purview of this is a council authority. And if the council feels that a work session is needed, it's good to know this board's open to that. I do think we have a structure here, and it's unclear to me if the council is going to see enough structure here and maybe have some changes in mind, but then it gets passed. If the council also has trouble and they feel it needs to be taken offline so we can have a conversation that is outside of the hearing process, I think I'd be looking for the council to direct that and the council to suggest that it wants to have a work session. It's good to know that this body would be open to that, but it's almost, I would see it as a legislative item. The council calls for the envisioned process it has. Technically, this body, which does deal a lot with land use and tends to be more of an expertise in land use, but as a legislative item, it's really the council to dictate the process it feels is warranted. So while I think that the comments are well taken, because I think Mr. De Silva is suggesting it's really difficult to write code when there's 3 bodies that can't just sit down in the same room together and hash it out. We have the staff, we have the planning commission, and we have the council, and we're sending messages to each other amongst 15-minute work sessions, or 15-minute hearings, I should say. My suggestion would be we've put some time and effort into it. There's a shot that what we have gives enough structure for the council to feel good about. Let's get it to the council, and if the council is not clear on what they want and they want a work session, then that's the next step. That's my suggestion. No matter what, this matter really should reappear in August, because as an average constituent, they were instructed this will be back in front of the council at August 25th. So I really want to appear there with the ability to make progress on something specific, and if we're not there, then we can table it.
Okay, so somewhere along the line, we got to move this, so.
I'm getting the feeling I don't think we're there. I just want to do this the right way. And my initial thought was, can we make a motion to continue this? But it sounds like no. It sounds like it needs to go somewhere out of this room.
Yeah,
We can't make a motion to continue this with some type of correspondence to the council to get the point across that we want to sit down together in a workshop.
I think the point is we need to provide direction one way or the other.
Yeah.
If we vote for no recommendation, it doesn't go anywhere. If we vote a neutral recommendation, it doesn't go anywhere. If we continue it, it doesn't go anywhere. So we just need to provide feedback. I think we're getting caught in the process. We need to decide, which is what our charge is. Do we like this as written, or do we like it with changes? I think that's where we need to be.
And based on the comments that we've heard, which there was only one, we don't like any kennel, any house with more than 5 dogs in any residential district. That's what we have to go on. I'm not saying that's the answer.
That's fine. I mean, keep in mind, when you say not more than 5,
Well, not more.
that's
than
a little
3.
different than saying no kennels in residential.
No
because
yeah,
we have
yeah.
a technical,
Okay.
a small kennel
All
is
right.
4 to 5 in residential.
Okay.
So I think that's the guidance we're looking for.
Number would be 3.
So, you're allowed to have 3.
Right.
4 is technically not allowed, but the animal control officer has an ability to give a waiver. This would probably start to put it into a category of it's now being regulated specifically.
Right, and you're right, Doug, I stand corrected. What basically it is any of these kennel definitions not allowed in the residential zone. That's the comment we got, right?
The comment we received was that they didn't want to see any additional dogs beyond 3 in residential zones at all. With the idea that I think the commenter understood that the animal control officer has a right to sign 4. As we develop zoning code here, there might be a conflict with the animal control officer continuing to do that. If we write that any kennel, between 4 to 5 dogs can't be done in a residential zone, they might not have the ability to waive.
We're dealing with the definition of kennels that was been provided in front of us. I think we should let's just try to formulate what we think should be the recommendation and move on. I don't mean to, but we got to get off the dime somewhere. So if you want to make a motion to ban, as you were doing, I'm fine with that. Because we got to vote. If you want to accept any zones, that's fine too.
I'm not even sure, I'm not even sure where to go with this. It's for the,
I think what you started to do was say, I'm fine. You start, again, if I hadn't pulled the boards, I just said, if your motion was to give a favorable recommendation, provided that the ordinance was amended to prohibit kennels as defined in this ordinance in any zone, any residential zone. That's what I think your motion was. So that would be all, R20, RR2, RR3, RR5.
and it sounds, some of the feedback, some of the things I'm hearing too is it needs work beyond that.
Well, I think it's going to generate a discussion at the council if that's what, they'll have to work that out. They may come back and say, no, we want them in the RR5 zones, or we want this particular type of kennel in the RR5 and the R2. That'll be up to them. But at least we've given them some direction based on the thoughts here. And that is, it seemed, and I heard this, if not directly for everything, but when we were talking about the business aspect, they don't belong in residential zones. Then we had a commenter get on and say, I don't think anybody should have more than 3 dogs in a residential zone. So if that's the position or what we think is going to be the catalyst for them to go back and look at this with those thoughts in mind, again, they're not going to be bound by our recommendation. It just means they're going to refine the ordinance further, and it may be something in between, or maybe they'll ban it in all residential zones. They've still got a public hearing, public comment that's going to go on at the council meeting, and they'll use that to shape their, whatever comes back to us. But I think it gets us out the door tonight.
I will make a motion, Mr. Chairman, if you will have it.
Yep.
On proposed ordinance 2026-17 sub A, I will forward a positive recommendation to the town council on the ordinance as it's consistent with findings of fact set forth in Rhode Island General Law 45-24-52 and the Coventry zoning section, with the amendment that we prohibit the use of kennels in all residential zones.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And we have a second so motion by Member Burke, second by Member Studley. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. And opposed?
Aye.
Okay, 4 opposed, motion carries. Send it
Thank you
back.
very much.
Send it back. Best we could do. We got one more item on the agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
You are
Planning
correct.
Director's report.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Timing was perfect. We were just finishing up. And you got here early, yeah.
We're on to director's report. I'm just gonna let you know that in your packet, you did receive this document, which is a follow-up. All of the members that I see here tonight were with us on Monday. I appreciate your time at that. I appreciate your guidance. I haven't even taken into account all of the guidance you provided. I know our consultant has it, and they're going to assemble that. But I did want to get, without this being a discussion tonight, just raise the opportunity that this is a more detailed document. It has all of the action items, which is the specific tangible steps that the town might take to further the range of housing goals, not just affordable, but all the housing goals. Eventually, you're going to be seeing a draft full housing chapter in front of you, and we're going to run that as a hearing with this board to receive a formal recommendation. This is really just pinging you to let you know if there are elements of what you see in this, because this is really the core policies. This is the biggest meat of that plan. If you see something in here, I'm asking you to please email me individually. That will help us. This is a board that, beyond the great session we had on Monday, this board, I think, has the opportunity to give us detailed feedback, and that will help make sure that we can incorporate it and we can have anticipate where this might go when it does come back to this board for a formal hearing. In my opinion, we could use this time today if anyone had any immediate reactions. We've had a busy meeting, so I'm really going to just suggest emailing is the best way. You can schedule a meeting with me. There's a lot of different ways. If the board wanted to take this moment to express any of its own ideas, you can. And then the other component that I was going to poll the board on was seeking another meeting. I think we've accomplished that. We accomplished the goal of scheduling another meeting. There's other work that's coming. You'll see also note on the director's report, subdivision land development regulations. We've kept that on there. We've been working in the background on that. We have, our consultant is gearing up to bring specific work products, and also some of these topics that we want to hit are broad. We want to revisit. The longtime board members may recall, some newer board members may not. We've had a few discussions dedicated to the topic of where would we allow multifamily housing or two-family housing, and what would that regulatory structure look like? We want to bring that conversation back and give it a little more structure. The housing element is setting a little bit of the background information that might be useful to us, but we want to come back and revisit what that might look like. We have a range of uses in town that used to be allowed through special use permit. We shut them all down. There's a range of those uses we do anticipate bringing back. You're seeing them come back bit by bit. When an applicant says, I want a gas station, and we come back to you, there's a range that we want to get ahead of. And there's also some additional work that's coming in terms of subdivision regulatory work. We're anticipating wanting to have a workshop with this board, and the consultants agreed to visit this board on at least 3 occasions. Some of these discussions are hard to have at the tail end of a long meeting when we have busy applications. I'm actually anticipating we may use a chunk of August 26th to dedicate to a little bit of that workshop. It's helpful to know that the big application we have is going to be heard on September 14th. It's also possible that we can use September 14th for any range of other business, but having a meeting on August, mid-September, and then late September, we're going to utilize one of those meetings in a workshop capacity to go through not just perhaps any comments on the comp plan, if you want to get into it then, but get into the upcoming code, get your direction, get your feedback. So I'm just letting you know what's coming. And I do anticipate this board would have a hearing on the comprehensive plan housing chapter. We would be anticipating, it is, me and my colleague here will consider all our options. We could still hold that hearing in August 26th. We could hold that hearing at September. I don't want to hold that hearing at the same meeting that we're hearing the large scale project we just heard. So we're contemplating a lot of balls in the air, and I'm just letting you know that you're going to see code work coming your way. You're going to see this housing chapter coming your way, and we want to dedicate enough time and energy on those issues to get some feedback and make progress. Does the board have a pleasure in terms of, my only content would be, I think September 14th will not be a night we're going to take on code, and it's not going to be a night we're going to take on any comprehensive plan. Does the board have any kind of feedback in terms of your disposition and utilizing the other meetings to take advantage of what that's a good question, and we can talk about it broadly. There is discussion about an application that would be coming back for preliminary plan. It would be a larger scale application. We anticipate that that might be submitted, but it's not clear if it's going to make it in time for the August 26th meeting. August 26th, we certainly are going to see one application we continued tonight, and I don't anticipate that being time consuming. We will know our deadline to make that agenda is coming up at the end of next week. So we're really going to know if someone lands the application or not. August 26th could be a great meeting to workshop some of the pending code and to perhaps even have potentially a hearing on the comprehensive plan housing chapter element. The housing chapter element, just to be fair, there's a lot of content. There's a lot of content online about it already. You've seen the needs analysis. You heard the presentation on Monday. There's documents online. You've seen the housing policy structure. The full chapter is going to be assembled in the coming weeks, and that would, once it's assembled, that document would be subject to a hearing and a recommendation by this board to the council. It might be that August 26th is an ideal day to take that on if a lot of the business tends to be finding itself flowing towards September.
I'm going to make a suggestion that without getting into specifics, you just say, hey, listen, for planning purposes, we've got some things coming up. We may need to have some special meetings. We may be able to piggyback other meetings. We have regular meetings on this date, and this date. Let's go out 3 months. Please advise us your availability and make sure and let me know if you have any vacations or any planned events so that you won't be able to attend. Because as you heard tonight, we've got a couple of folks that won't be at next month's meeting. We've got other folks traveling in the middle of September. I'm going to be traveling in the middle of October, and I actually haven't really taken any time. I'm more of a spur of the moment person. So I don't want to get caught up where we're starting to plan meetings and then all of a sudden, oh, he can't make it. Oh, he can't make it. So it might help for planning. I'm not opposed to an extra meeting in a month on a Wednesday. That's one of the off Wednesdays. Or again, if you think there's room in the agenda to say, hey, let's do the comp permit stuff or this stuff at the beginning of the meeting. We'll put it on the agenda first, even if we come a little early, as long as we know it's a hard stop. Let's say in 30 or 60 minutes, whatever it is, and then we start the regular meeting and go to the regular agenda so applicants can come. Because I just don't want it's nice you're throwing all this out and everything, but then it'll come to the time and it's like, oh, this one can't make it, that one can't make it. You don't have a quorum. Business isn't getting done. I mean, next month, like I said, we've already got 2 out. And again, we got the vacancy we got to fill. And I think we've got to reach out to the individual that's on medical leave right now, just to make sure that at least they plan to be back, let's say within 60 days, if not sooner. If they can't commit to 60 days, I think we gotta look at an option.
Yeah, and that's fair. And the member it has put in their time and effort. They visited me. They let me know where they stand.
Oh,
Yeah, and
I'm
I
not I'm just
I know you and I have spoken about that.
We missed one application and we almost got jammed up on the other one.
Yeah. No, our quorums are tight. Well, let me ask it this way. There's 2 members at this meeting tonight that we know would not be in attendance on August 26th. There's always opportunity for people to give me feedback offline, but is the thought that we would not want to hold a hearing on the comprehensive plan housing chapter on that night because we're missing some of our members?
Oh, we don't even have to vote on it. You can have the hearing. They can watch it on the tape.
I mean, to vote, you have to be here in person, but those members could also write me an extensive email and I would read that email at the meeting and say, here's where their position is, and we'd incorporate that. But it's a dynamic thing to discuss during a meeting.
I'm worried about getting the quorums at these meetings because we're getting into, some folks haven't traveled. They haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, Member Burke is actually on vacation for 2 weeks. He had 2 meetings during his vacation, and today's his birthday.
Today's your birthday, Mike?
And here
Mike, what a soldier.
10 o'clock.
I appreciate it. I anticipate we likely will be able to have a meeting on the 26th. I'm going to be inquiring in those members that weren't here tonight to make sure that, we see what we can do. Obviously, we're down 2 here. we need at least two. I'm hoping to have even more. I'm hoping that open position also may even get filled in this timeframe. Actually, I can tell you it wouldn't get filled before August 25th because it's not on the agenda for the next July, and the next council meeting in August is not until August. Well,
That's
maybe by the 25th
So
they'd
the-
appoint someone.
But the point I was making is if you can't have it on the 25th, we might be able to move. It's early enough that you could move it. You might be able to move it up or move it back.
What, the
or do
August
something.
meeting?
Yeah. If you
The
had,
only challenge is we just continued one application tonight to August 26th.
yeah, that's true. Well, better than.
I think I have faith that we could have a quorum on the 26th. My goal is to run the meetings the most efficiently. Generally, we might get a heavy-handed application next week, and then we decide, you know what? Turns out we're going to need to dedicate August to a regular application. I'm also open to using that to do a workshop or
But
anything else.
I really don't want to hear a big project and then say, well, we scraped up 5 people, you know?
Yeah.
We should have as many of the board members as we can here. That's what I want to strive for.
Yeah,
If,
yeah.
if we got a big application. I mean,
Because
if
the
we've
problem
got
comes,
routine.
what if somebody, it can only be, if it's not voted on, it's continued, it can only be heard by that group that heard it.
Well, comp
So-
permits, yeah. There's
becomes the problem.
specific language on comp permits, but other applications, there is an ability for someone to say, I reviewed the record, I'm caught up. Comp permits, there's language that says that the members have to be present for the duration of the hearing.
Get written into the law because
But
they
we,
were afraid
we-
they were named.
yeah, but I actually anticipate and am fully going to plan for the concept that on September 14th, we both continued that. That was a nice communication piece. I anticipate we're going to renotice, which will allow members that weren't here tonight to regain the authority. And then everything that happened at tonight's meeting is going to be incorporated into the new record by reference. It's basically what we did for a previous application, and it opens the door for new members to participate. And I think I'd like for that kind of application, I'd like for everyone to be able to participate. At any rate, I mean, this is a long-winded way to say, we've got more work coming. Some of the work is not, development review. It is, workshop and code. We are going to want to take advantage of the best meetings we can. And it might be that on August 26th, you end up seeing a mix of code, and it may even be possible that you see a hearing for the comprehensive plan chapter. We know the document will be ready. And then if those members that can't make it, I highly encourage, reach out to me. You want to meet with me? Meet with me. You want to give me your content? Give me your content. And, but I don't want to hold important binding meetings if there's members that can't attend and they really want to be part of it. So I'm willing to hear you out if you want to make sure you avoid certain actions on those meetings. So long story short, I'm gonna be hitting you guys up with emails. You're gonna be knowing what's coming in these meetings. And then if we get to a point where someone wants to express in an email, hey, I'd really like to be here. Can we handle that somewhat differently? I want to hear from you, but there's a lot coming your way in the next 2 to 3 months. You're welcome.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Discussion?
Aye.
Thanks, guys.